Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was one of the Jedi. At the start of their trip, Naruto and Jiraiya find themselves pulled into the future by an unknown force. With no way back home, and no idea what's going on, what will they do? Join the Jedi, naturally. But there are other, more sinister forces after them as well. With the Force to wield and a new group of friends, can Naruto change the future of a galaxy threatened by darkness? Welcome aboard! Chapter 13. Naruto woke up slowly, which was somewhat unusual for him. Since joining Team 7, he had become accustomed to sleeping lightly and rousing himself quickly. That habit had only been reinforced by his training at the Jedi Temple in the last few months. Now, however, he was slowly drifting up towards consciousness, as though rising through a morass. As more bits of his brain began reporting for duty, Naruto became aware of the fact that he was lying on a comfortable, if somewhat firm mattress, with a warm blanket covering him. Given that his last recollection was of sitting propped against a stack of crates on a hard floor, he gathered he had been moved. Groaning softly, he opened his eyes. As his vision came into focus, he saw the familiar arching ceilings of the temple. That makes sense, he supposed. His nose twitched as he smelled the distinctive odor of disinfectant. I must be in the halls of healing. Poodoo. Before he could rally his scattered neurons and begin planning an escape from the infirmary, a familiar face loomed into view. Jiraiya looked down at him, smiling warmly. Good to see you awake, kid, he said, carefully hiding the relief in his voice. You certainly took your time. Did you have a nice nap? How long was I out? Naruto asked in return. All afternoon, Jiraiya said. It's nearly sunset now. How are you feeling? I'm fine, Naruto said, waving off his godfather's concern. A little hungry. Where's Ahsoka and the others? Are they okay? Those women you two freed are being processed by the Jedi and local authorities, Jiraiya said, knowing that if he didn't answer Naruto's question he would just try and sneak away to find out himself. There are apparently a few aid groups that help women in their position. They'll be fine. As for Ahsoka I'm just fine, came Ahsoka's familiar, and somewhat annoyed, voice. Naruto glanced over to see her in a bed next to his, her arms crossed defiantly. Seriously, she said, I'm not injured. Why do I need to stay in bed? Because the healer said so, and I've long since learned not to disobey a doctor, Jiraiya said with an air that told Naruto he was not hearing the first iteration of this conversation. Master Nema said that both of you need to stay overnight for monitoring and bed rest. Deal with it. Naruto and Ahsoka let out identical groans of exasperation when they heard they would have to stay overnight. Jiraiya merely rolled his eyes at their antics. He knew that Naruto hated having to stay in hospitals, and it seemed that Ahsoka had a similar aversion to medical care. Occasionally, the two of them were so alike it was scary. He had been glad that Naruto had found friends so quickly in the temple, but did he have to befriend someone so similar to himself? One Naruto was handful enough, as much as he cared for the boy. Even so, he had to admit that Ahsoka was growing on him. Jiraiya had only met her a few times, but she struck him as being smart, fearless, and determined, all qualities he prized. The fact that she had apparently not only survived her recent ordeal, but actually saved Naruto's life, and then played a key role in rescuing a bunch of slaves, spoke volumes about both her skills and her character. Of course, she was also cocky, headstrong, disrespectful, and frequently disobedient, but in that, Jiraiya reasoned, she was still only a kid. It wasn't like Naruto was much better, though he was certainly improving rapidly. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud growling sound coming from Naruto's stomach. Glancing over at his godson, Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at him. Just a little hungry, huh? He said sarcastically. Okay, fine, I'm starving, Naruto replied, before gaining a conniving light in his eyes. Do you think you could go and get me some food from the mess? Nice try, kid, Jiraiya laughed. But I'm not letting either of you out of my sight until Master Nema says you can leave. I'll get a droid to bring food. Ah, come on Jiraiya-sensei, Ahsoka whined, having catoned onto Naruto's plan. Why can't you just go get it yourself? It'll be faster that way. Because I know you too, Jiraiya said, fixing them both with a hard stare. The minute I walk out that door, you and Naruto will start trying to escape. Master Nema told me to keep an eye on you too, and that's what I intend to do. So, live with it. Neither of them even tried to protest their innocence. Instead, they just rolled their eyes and settled back into their beds with a huff. Jiraiya, satisfied that he had gotten his point across, moved to a comm panel on a nearby wall. He signaled for a service droid to bring food for both of them, making sure to factor in just how much Naruto could eat when he was hungry. This resulted in the droid thinking it was bringing food for 12, but Jiraiya ignored it. A few minutes later, the droid arrived, pulling a cart piled with food. Finally, Naruto exclaimed, "I was about ready to start eating the blanket." Ahsoka merely stared blankly at the huge amount of food. "That looks like enough to feed 3 Wookiees," she said. "How are we supposed to eat all of that?" Her question was answered a few moments later when Naruto began devouring the food with a speed and efficiency that would have shamed a pack of Nexu. Much to her bafflement and irritation, he somehow managed to do so while still wearing his mask. Shaking her head at the weirdness that was Naruto, Ahsoka turned to her own plate and eagerly tucked in. It took a while, but eventually even Naruto's seemingly bottomless stomach was filled. He lay back down with a contented sigh, having resigned himself to staying in the infirmary overnight. Jiraiya, noticing his godson's apparent relaxation, moved to clear away the plates stacked around him. "Listen, kid," he said after he was done, "I'm tired." "You're tired. Master Nema is still around here somewhere. I'd rather not stay up all night making sure you and Ahsoka stay here. If I go take a nap, do you promise not to leave? It's not like you have anything better to do than spend the night here." Naruto mulled it over for a bit before shrugging his shoulders. "Fine," he said. "I promise I won't try to escape. You can go to sleep." Jiraiya stared at him for a few seconds before nodding gratefully. He trusted Naruto to keep a promise, so he went over to one of the beds and lay down. With the speed of an experienced soldier, he fell asleep in less than a minute. Naruto sighed and stared up at the ceiling for a few minutes. Suddenly, seemingly without warning, he shot an arm out to one side. He grabbed a small orange hand that had been sneakily creeping towards his face, intending to pull down his mask. "Come on, Ahsoka, that was just weak," he said. "Did you really think that would work? I thought you were asleep," she grumbled. "I will see what's under there one of these days. And don't you say I've already seen what's under your mask. You know what I mean." Naruto laughed at that, before squeezing her hand gently. He propped himself up on his pillows so he could look at her properly. "Are you really okay?" he asked her, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "You didn't get hurt?" For a moment, Ahsoka's normal look of cocky defiance softened into a genuine smile. She squeezed his hand back. "I'm fine," she said. "Really? You saved my life." "Thank you." Naruto smiled at that, though her next words cut him off. "Although, I'm sure I would have found a way to get out of that," she said, her brash confidence returning. "And if you ever try to swoop in to rescue me like some damsel in distress again, I'll kick your butt from here to an hour shot at and back, got it?" Naruto just rolled his eyes and waved her statement off. She snorted at that, before going back to her own bed, exhaustion once again rearing its head. Naruto was already asleep by the time she laid down. As she began to drift off herself, she had one last, horrible thought. They were going to have to report to the council the next day, weren't they? "Thank you for your report, Master Unduli," Mace Windu said. "We have no further questions for you or Jiraiya. You may both go. Tell Naruto and Ahsoka to wait until we call them in." "Yes, Master," Luminara said as both she and Jiraiya bowed their heads respectfully. They had spent the past hour recounting their version of the events of the previous day, from the arrival of the messenger toad, to when they both arrived back at the temple. The council had been especially interested in Naruto's use of the Force to create the wall between the Black Sun mercenaries and the slaves. Apparently, they had felt the splash of his exertion and the Force all the way in the temple. Luminara had reported her own perception of Naruto's Force usage to the council, including its odd contradiction of being both fueled by emotions and also firmly rooted in the light. She herself was not certain how to interpret such a phenomenon, but she hoped the council did not censure the boy for it. As she had told them, regardless of how it was inspired, she was unshakably convinced that Naruto had used the light side of the Force and not the dark. She had mentioned her various discussions with Jiraiya, but she had kept the details of them to herself. She was not yet sure how to feel about his views, but they were difficult to ignore. Something about his beliefs resonated with her, and she wanted to meditate on it before bringing it before the council. Thankfully, Jiraiya had also chosen to leave out the particulars of what he had discussed with her. Judging by the thoughtful feel of Plo-kun's signature, however, she was not the only person present who had had an interesting conversation with the white-haired man. Jiraiya had, in truth, said very little during their report. He had explained the nature of a messenger toad to those masters who were confused on the matter, and described how he had dealt with the slavers still in the building when they had arrived. His description of the Gamaguchi Shirbari technique he had used had stirred up some comment, but no real condemnation. Most of the masters were more interested in how the technique worked than they were upset at his use of it to kill the slavers. They had chosen their path, and Jiraiya had killed them out of simple necessity rather than any anger or hate. Sadly, as he had explained before, the toad techniques required a contract with the mysterious beings, and that required the use of chakra. So far, no Jedi had yet managed to channel the force through their bodies to produce chakra for more than a second or two. The council, on Plo-kun's recommendation, was going to begin deliberations on establishing an actual class for Jiraiya to teach select Jedi how to use chakra-based techniques. As they walked out into the hall, Luminara nodded at the group waiting outside. Naruto and Ahsoka were sitting on one of the benches that lined the hall for people to wait on while the council deliberated. Across from them sat Padawan Sakura. She had been assigned by the council to watch over the two younglings and ensure they didn't find any more trouble before the council could see them. "Are they ready for us?" Naruto asked eagerly, impatient for this to be over. "We've been waiting for hours." Ayla smacked him lightly on the head for his attitude, which he took without even flinching. He had survived love taps from Tsunade after mouthing off before. A gentle rap didn't even come close to phasing him. "Be patient, brat," Jiraiya said, sighing at Naruto's attitude. "They'll call you when they're ready. Until then, wait here. And try not to get into any more trouble than you're already in." He turned to leave when he was interrupted by Naruto's indignant voice. "Hey, where are you going?" he said, clearly irritated at being left to face the council and his boredom alone. "I am going to go work out and study," Jiraiya said, "because I am not the one in trouble. You, on the other hand, are in trouble, so you are going to stay here." Both Naruto and Ahsoka pouted at that, much to Ayla's amusement. As Jiraiya and Luminara walked away, she smiled and patted them both on the head. "Cheer up, you two. If I'm going to have to babysit you two, the least you can do is not look like it's a death sentence," she said teasingly. She often was like this, dropping her serious Jedi front when around the two mischief makers. Naruto had introduced her to Ahsoka shortly after they had first met, and she had quickly struck up a friendship with the younger girl. "I still don't get why we need a babysitter, Ayla," Ahsoka said, unable to keep a hint of sulking from her voice. Kid or not, she was not happy to be treated as such. "The council decided you needed minding because you two somehow managed to turn a bit of innocent exploration into a death-defying trek through one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy, and capped it off by getting in a fight with a gang of slavers and making enemies of Black Sun," Ayla replied cheekily, lightly flicking Ahsoka's nose. "They chose me because I once spent nearly a month in a relatively small ship with Naruto, and I managed to resist the urge to strangle him in his sleep. They probably figured that I'm as immune to his Naruto-ness as anyone they could find." Ahsoka giggled at that while Naruto shot both of them a glare. They both pointedly ignored him, enjoying watching him twitch with irritation. Eventually he decided to preserve what dignity he could and let it go with a huff. "I should never have introduced you two," he said glumly. "You always gang up on me." Before either girl could prepare an appropriately witty remark, a tone chimed from a hidden speaker in the wall. The council was ready for them. "Well, good luck you two," Ayla said. "I'd go with you, but I don't want to." Neither Naruto nor Ahsoka acknowledged her, though, as they both hurried through the door into the council chambers. It seemed the prospect of actually facing the group of masters had reminded them that they were, in fact, in trouble. Neither of them wanted to make their situation worse by keeping the council waiting. They hurried in and stood in the center of the round room, trying not to look nervous. Neither of them had ever stood before the council alone before. The fact that they didn't have a knight or a master escorting them was a good thing, as it meant the council wasn't holding a formal disciplinary hearing. It did not serve to give them more confidence, however. "Before we begin, good to see you unharmed, it is," Yoda said, his kind voice and soothing presence helping ease their nerves. Terrible it would have been if lost to the Undercity you were. Indeed, Ki-Adi-Mundi said. However, that raises the question of how you ended up down there in the first place. Please tell us what led to you finding yourselves all the way on level 1. Well, it started when I was reading about the history of the temple in the archives, Naruto said. He went on to describe his discovery of the old structures and tunnels, and his plan to explore them with Ahsoka. He omitted the birthday surprise he had planned for her, knowing that certainly would not go over well with many of the stuffier masters. He suspected they knew he was leaving something out, but none of them called him on it, so he moved on. It was as he was telling them how they had encountered Tora that a question occurred to him. Where is Tora, masters? He asked. Is he okay? The Lothcat had no identichip, and no one has reported a missing pet matching his description, Master Bailaba said, smiling slightly at Naruto's concern for the animal. We surrendered him to a shelter the Order works with in cases such as this. He will be fine, young one. Please continue your report. Naruto nodded, relieved that Tora had been taken care of, though also somewhat sad he would not see the Lothcat again. He had just managed to make friends with the feline after all. Still, he had more important things to focus on at the moment, so he resumed his story. Several of the masters were skeptical of his description of Gamahiro's size, but Ahsoka backed him up on it. He decided not to mention her being sick after the ride, not wanting to embarrass her in front of the council. That would make her mad at him, and that could be bad for his health. Ahsoka wasn't violent like Sakura had been, at least not usually, but she also wasn't shy about letting you know if she was upset. It was when he reached the part where they had been attacked by the monsters that Ahsoka asked her first question. Masters, do you know what those zombie-like things were? She asked. I've never seen or heard of anything like them. They were the Chthon, Plo-kun answered. The descendants of ancient criminals banished to the lower levels tens of thousands of years ago. Over time, the pollution and diseases down there have mutated them into the sad creatures you encountered. So, they were sentient? Ahsoka said, a little horrified. She had killed several of the Chthon, thinking them nothing more than wild beasts at the time. No, young one, not really, Plo replied gently, sensing her fear and revulsion. They are little more than vicious animals now, and were a threat to you besides. You should feel no guilt for having slain them. Several of the other masters nodded at this, and her worry began to subside. All of a sudden, she felt a warm hand squeeze her shoulder. Looking over, she saw Naruto had reached out to comfort her, heedless of the disapproving looks half the council was sending him. The last of her fear fled before his reassuring presence, and she gave him a grateful smile. He returned it with his eyes before focusing back on the masters, ignoring the stern frowns that many of them now bore. If they wanted to stop him from comforting someone in need, his best friend no less, then they were going to need a lot more than stern looks. Yoda, who did not bear the judgmental look of several of his fellow masters, waved for Naruto to continue, preventing any words from Taiyin or Rancisis on proper comportment and lack of attachment. He didn't necessarily fully disagree with what he sensed they wanted to say, but neither did he agree with how harsh and inflexible either of them would be on the matter. It was a subject he suspected would come up in the debate after the two younglings had finished reporting. As he listened to their story, Yoda was impressed by how well the two of them seemed to have worked together. He knew that Naruto had had a great deal of prior training in teamwork, but it seemed to come naturally to him as well. He was also very pleased to hear that young Skywalker had apparently taken the boy under his wing and tutored him in mechanics. Skywalker was a true prodigy in that field, or at least so Yoda had been told. The ancient Grandmaster had little skill with electronics himself, and was far more often the cause of their needing repair rather than the one repairing them. Nevertheless, it was heartening to hear that Skywalker and Naruto were getting along. He had not wanted resentment to build between the two. In truth, though, Yoda was less worried about young Skywalker's emotional stability than he had ever been. Since the boy's mother had been rescued and brought to Coruscant, much of his inner turmoil had eased. He was still as cocky and impulsive as ever, but it was no longer accompanied by such overwhelming fear and anger. They were still there, it was true, but manageable now. Everything went smoothly until Naruto reached the point where the thugs had initially attacked them. When he began describing how he and Ahsoka had first escaped the slavers on the landing platform, his voice faltered somewhat. As he went on to describe how he had killed the two gangsters who had blocked their escape route, a swell of guilt rose in his forced presence. You seem distressed by something, young Naruto, Yariel Poof noted. What is troubling you? It's just that, well, I hate killing people, Master, Naruto said miserably. The Jedi teach to never kill in anger, and Jiraiya-sensei taught me the same thing, but when I killed them, I was angry. But when you killed them, did you do it because you were angry? Mace asked calmly. Or were you just angry at them at the same time as having to kill them? Huh? Naruto said, confused at the difference. Mace sighed and tried again. I have killed many beings, he said evenly, and I was angry at quite a few of them. But I didn't kill them because I was angry. I killed them because at that moment, it was the best option I had. So, tell me, did you kill them because you were angry at them? Naruto's face scrunched up in thought as he remembered back to the incident in question. He recalled seeing the two block the alley, thinking it was their only path. As he walked back through his thought process in that moment, he came to a conclusion. No, Master, he said eventually. I didn't kill them out of anger. I did it because I had no other choice. But I was still angry. I thought Jedi weren't supposed to feel anger. Eventually you may reach the point of true serenity, where you do not feel anger or fear, Mace said. However, until then, as you live the life of a Jedi, you will see things that would make any moral being angry. There is no crime in righteous outrage. The most important thing is to never act out of emotion, but to remain calm and centered. Naruto nodded a little hesitantly at that. He understood not letting negative emotions like fear, anger, or hate fuel you. That was how he had almost lost control to the Kyuubi after all. But he wasn't so sure about ignoring happiness, friendship, and love. Those positive emotions had helped him save Ahsoka, after all, and he hadn't felt dark doing that. They couldn't be all bad if they could help him keep people safe. Mace sensed Naruto's uncertainty, but he did not comment on it. There would be plenty of time to drill the Jedi way into his head. Now was the time for hearing this report and deciding what to do with the two adventurous children before him. Teaching Naruto the importance of the code would come later. As he described his plan to save the slaves from their captors, Master Rancisis spoke up. What made you decide to take such a risk? He asked sternly. It was foolhardy of you to attempt such a thing. You placed your life, Ahsoka's life, and the lives of all those slaves in danger. There were people in trouble, Naruto answered, glaring a bit at the Vespasian master. What was I supposed to do, just leave them? You should never have been in that position in the first place, Master Tien said. If Ahsoka and I hadn't been down there, those people would have never been rescued. Naruto said, his voice rising. The Republic wasn't going to help them, it didn't even know they existed. I will never abandon people who need my help. The conviction he put into the last sentence threw Master Tien a bit. He had expected an arrogant response about how Naruto figured the gangsters were no match for him. Hearing a declaration of compassion was unexpected, though not entirely unwelcome. No one here believes you should have left those women to their fate, Adi Gallia said. We are merely concerned that you acted without thinking and took on an unnecessary risk. Before Naruto could object, Yoda spoke up. No longer relevant, such debate is, he said. Reckless it may have been, but motivated by compassion, your plan was. A good thing you two did, but take care in the future. Not always there to save you, others will be. That seemed to satisfy, or at least mollify, both Naruto and the rest of the council. Glancing at Mace, Yoda decided it was time to wrap this portion of the meeting up. They had heard all that they needed, and both he and Mace had already agreed on what actions to take. With a subtle twitch of his ears, he signaled Mace to proceed. Given what we heard here, the council will not be punishing either of you for your actions in the Undercity, Mace said, gaining looks of relief from both Naruto and Ahsoka. Those looks vanished at his next words, though. Your blatant disregard for both curfew in sneaking out and exploring out of bounds, however, is another matter. Master Liam had been notified of your transgressions, and I'm sure she has prepared suitable disciplinary measures by now. You will both report to her in the creche as soon as you leave here. I suggest you do not get lost on the way. His not-so-subtle dig was lost on the two, as they both looked appropriately glum at the prospect of their immediate futures. Mace nodded to himself at that. He had known Master Liam many years, and she knew exactly how to assign punishments that left you both thoroughly miserable and also forced you to reflect on your misdeeds, if only out of boredom. These two would be in for it the next few days, he had no doubt.
As soon as Master Yoda dismissed them, Ahsoka and Naruto hurried out the door.
They rushed past Ayla with barely a word, determined to get to the creche before Master Liam decided they were late and started adding punishments to what they both knew was likely an already long list. As they were walking down the hall at the base of the council spire, Ahsoka received something of a surprise. She nearly bumped heads with Naruto, who was hanging upside down from the ceiling. This was not in itself too unusual, as Naruto frequently took advantage of his ability to stick to near any surface in blatant defiance of gravity. What surprised her was that Naruto had been, and still was, behind her the whole time. Whipping her head around, she confirmed that there were, in fact, two of them. "What's with the clone?" she whispered, worried he was going to get them both in more trouble. "I had him go get something for me," Naruto said, taking a package from his upside-down clone, who promptly dispelled. "Since I wasn't able to give it to you properly yesterday, here you go. Happy birthday." He held the package out to Ahsoka. She took it and saw that it was a bag full of candied Ronto jerky, her favorite treat. Her grin just about split her face in half, and she gave Naruto a tight hug. "Thank you," she said. "I'd forgotten you had mentioned that before. You're the best, even if you do get me into trouble all the time." Naruto smiled and scratched the back of his head sheepishly. There wasn't a whole lot he could say to that, given the events of the previous day. "Now come on," Ahsoka said, turning to hurry down the hall. "We have to hide this before we get to Master Liam. Let's go." Meanwhile, back in the council chambers, a debate was ongoing. The subject of the debate, predictably enough, was the two younglings who had just scampered off to face their just desserts. "Those two are far too attached to one another," Master Tyan warned. "The boy in particular. He is too ruled by his emotions." "Perhaps," even Peel said, speaking up for the first time that day. "But you cannot argue with their results. Surviving a trip to level 1 is impressive enough for two younglings, but busting up a slaving ring on top of that? That is truly remarkable work. I look forward to seeing what they accomplish in the future." "You don't mean to say you support their actions?" Oppo Rancisis asked. "If I recall, you opposed Naruto being admitted in the first place. What about this incident could have changed your mind?" "What can I say? I appreciate effort and results," Peel replied. "The boy may be emotional, but his heart is clearly in the right place. It was brave of them to do what they did, foolish or not." "What about the boy's use of the Force then?" Tyan said, temporarily conceding the point on Naruto's decision to rescue the slaves. In truth, he was more or less satisfied that Naruto had made that choice for the right reasons, if not with the appropriate amount of caution. We all felt it, even here. He used his emotions, his passion, to fuel his power. That is the very core of the dark side. Several masters shook their heads in disagreement, and Yaddle actually snorted at that. "The dark side, you say?" she asked rhetorically. "The dark side was it, that we felt, Not what I felt, that was. The light, young Naruto used, yes. Felt that clearly, we all did. But Master Yaddle, surely you must see that he drew on his emotions," Tyan protested. "Such passion is the essence of the dark." Disagree, I do," Yaddle replied, drawing some curious looks from her fellows. "If true that was, then tainted Naruto's power would have felt. Pure it was. Anger, fear, and selfishness most of all, the dark side are they. Felt those in him, I did not. Compassion, friendship, a desire to protect others, fueled by these his actions were. Too wedded to the letter of the code are you, if deny the evidence of your senses you will." Master Tyan lapsed into a thoughtful silence at that, a contemplative frown on his face. He did not want to admit it, as it went against everything he understood about the Jedi Code, but Yaddle was right in this case. While he had indeed felt strong emotions fueling Naruto's use of the Force, he had not felt any accompanying darkness. The Force signature lacked the burning cold, the slimy taint, and the oppressive weight that typified the dark side. Much as Luminara had reported earlier, it had instead shone in the light in a way Tyan had never seen before. "I agree with Master Yaddle," Yariel Poof said. "Indeed, were it not for Master Windu's prior claim, I would take the boy as a Padawan myself. As it is, I suspect you will have all manner of fun to look forward to in the future, Master Windu." His last sentence was laced with not-so-subtle humor, and had Mace fixing him with a deadpan stare. Internally, Mace had to concede the point, sarcastic though it may have been. He was definitely in for one hell of a ride with Naruto as a Padawan, he could feel it. Indeed, in some ways he was looking forward to it. Mace was, at heart, a straightforward man. He always sought to do what was right, regardless of the personal consequences. He could appreciate seeing the same traits in Naruto, and he looked forward to working with someone who shared his moral convictions. That being said, based on the boy's current record, that work would come with a certain dose of insanity that seemed to follow Naruto like a puppy. That part, he was decidedly not looking forward to. A part of him was quietly thankful he kept his head shaved. Otherwise, Naruto was no doubt going to turn his hair gray.
That does raise one question, Ithkoth said. With respect, Master Windu, as Master of the Order, do you truly have the time to devote to training a Padawan?
That is something I have been considering myself over the last few months, Mace said, quietly grateful for the change of subject. I believe it would be best if I step down from my position as Master of the Order once Naruto is ready for me to take him as a Padawan. There was some surprise at this, but not much. While Yoda's position as Grandmaster was usually hands-off, and left him with just enough time to take apprentices from time to time, the same could not be said for Mace's job. The Master of the Order ran the Order day to day, deciding policy, arranging missions, and generally making sure the Jedi Order as a whole kept functioning. It was a full-time commitment and then some, and there was a reason Mace had not taken a Padawan since being elected to the post. I believe we should hold a vote now, to determine my replacement, Mace continued. It would be best if I were able to help them become accustomed to the position before stepping down. There was general agreement on that point, and the process of electing a new Master of the Order began. Initially, Yoda was put forward as the obvious candidate, but he refused. He had held the post before, and felt that a new voice was best in this case. He was already Grandmaster, and did not wish to bind the Order too much to his singular vision if he could avoid it.
In the end, after several more hours of debate, Yariel Poof was elected to replace Mace when he stepped down.
Yariel had nearly been elected to the post before, but had lost to Mace, as he was considered somewhat eccentric and unconventional by the council's standards. Yaddle privately looked forward to seeing what changes he might bring to the Order, especially with Naruto and Jiraiya bringing changes of their own.
The next day,
Anakin was walking past one of the temple's training rooms when he felt something odd through the Force. It was as though someone was repeatedly stretching out their presence before shutting it down almost completely. Normally he would have dismissed this as some master practicing some obscure meditation technique or the like, but the Force signature was definitely not that of a master, despite its power. It was sloppy, wild and untrained, tinged throughout with boredom and a hint of frustration.
Moreover, it was familiar to him. Peeking his head through the door, Anakin's suspicions were confirmed. Sitting on one side of the room was Naruto, surrounded by cleaning equipment and a half-dozen training sabers.
As Anakin watched, he saw the cause of the odd feeling in the Force. Naruto closed his eyes, concentrated, and suddenly his Force signature bloomed into life, far beyond what Anakin had felt from him in the past. From across the room, a training saber wobbled on its rack, rose into the air, and zoomed through air towards Naruto's outstretched hand.
It then missed his hand entirely and smacked into his face. Ouch! Damn it, Naruto swore, clutching his bruised forehead.
Well, that's new, Anakin said, making Naruto jerk around in shock. So, you finally managed to touch the Force without meditating.
When did you figure out how to do that? And what are you doing here?
Naruto got over his shock at Anakin somehow sneaking up on him quickly, and tried to cover it with a mask of cool indifference. It wasn't working, but Anakin took pity and decided not to tease him about it. Not when there were other things to tease him for, at least. I managed it a few days ago, Naruto said.
Didn't you hear what happened to Ahsoka and I the other day?
No, Obi-Wan and I just got back from a mission, Anakin said.
I haven't even finished unpacking yet. What happened?
Naruto gave him the full story of what had happened 2 days prior, from his initial plan to surprise Ahsoka all the way to him finally tapping into the Force without having to meditate. By the end of his story, Anakin was shaking his head, a wry look on his face.
Only you, Naruto, he said.
Wow, that even tops most of the stunts I pulled back when I was your age. You're going to have to introduce me to this Ahsoka one of these days. If she can manage to fly something you fixed up, then I definitely want to race her one of these days. Yeah, she's pretty awesome, Naruto said. Before his brain processed, he had been insulted. Hey! What's wrong with the stuff I fix? It worked, didn't it? Anakin just shot him a look he had picked up from Obi-Wan, raised eyebrow and all. It said, think about what you just said for a minute, and then get back to me. I'll wait here until you realize I'm right. Obi-Wan had some very expressive looks, and Anakin had copied more than a few of them. He had certainly seen this one often enough. Naruto stared back defiantly for all of about 10 seconds before he glanced away, an embarrassed flush poking over the edges of his mask. Okay, fine, maybe it wasn't my best ever repair work, Naruto admitted, before looking up slyly. But you're the one who taught me, so doesn't that make it your fault more than anything? A student is only as good as his teacher after all. Why you little dash, Anakin spluttered furiously, unsure of how the conversation had been so quickly turned against him. I suppose I'll just need more lessons, Naruto said. Maybe even flying lessons? We'll see, Anakin said, before quickly changing the subject. I suppose this is supposed to be your punishment, huh? Where's your partner in crime? Ahsoka got sent to clean all the training sabers in the other half of the temple, Naruto said. Apparently Master Liam didn't trust us not to get into more trouble if left alone together. Privately, Anakin thought that was a wise decision by Master Liam. Naruto already attracted trouble and weirdness like a star attracted planets. From what he had heard of Ahsoka, putting both of them in a room with 100 lightsabers, training or not, might just end with the temple being blown up. So, what's with you using the Force like that every 30 seconds, he asked, referring to the periodic pulses that had led him here in the first place. I'm practicing, Naruto answered. I finally figured out how to touch the Force normally, but I'm not very good at it yet. Yeah, I could tell, Anakin teased, gesturing to the darkening bruise that adorned Naruto's forehead where the saber hilt had struck him. Want some tips? Naruto just about put a crick in his neck, he looked up so fast. Really? He asked, clearly shocked at the offer. That would be awesome. Thanks, Anakin. Anakin smiled and took a seat next to his younger brother figure. Internally, however, he winced a little. For all that he had tried to do for him, Naruto was still far too surprised when someone offered him help or praise. Not that I'm all that much better, Anakin thought ruefully, before pushing the thought down. He had better things to do than try and focus on his own flaws. For the next 30 minutes, Anakin walked Naruto through some basic exercises to help him control his use of the Force. Being that they had both come to Jedi training far later in life than most, Anakin was uniquely qualified to help Naruto make it past some of the hurdles he was facing. They didn't make too much progress, as it was by no means a quick thing to learn, but Naruto was showing definite improvement. He wasn't wasting quite so much energy each time he used the Force, and he was able to maintain his grip on it marginally longer. After half an hour, though, Anakin glanced at his chrono. He suppressed a groan as he saw the time, knowing that Obi-Wan would probably be looking for him by now. Sighing, he stood up and clapped Naruto on the shoulder. Sorry, but I've got to get going, he said apologetically. You're doing good, just keep up practicing, okay? Okay, Naruto said, not bothering to hide his disappointment that Anakin, who he saw as something of an older brother figure, was leaving. As he reached the door, Anakin turned around and looked at him again. Naruto, thank you for freeing those slaves, he said, his voice serious. I really don't like slavery, and it's awesome that you and Ahsoka did that. It's no problem, Naruto said, smiling. Slavery is just evil. I couldn't have left those women there, and neither could Ahsoka. Anakin hesitated a little before responding. Naruto, you heard that my mother was freed a few months ago, right? He asked. Naruto nodded. Anakin had told him himself after all. It had been all he could talk about for over a week. Well, sometimes I sneak out to see her, Anakin said. We usually have lunch together somewhere. The next time I do you want to come? I think you'd really like her. Think of it as my way of thanking you for what you did for those people. What Anakin didn't say was that he thought it would be good for Naruto to meet Shmi. He honestly viewed the younger boy as something of a little brother figure, and he knew Naruto had never had a mother figure in his life. He thought it might help him to have one, at least somewhat, and as far as Anakin was concerned, there was no better mom in the entire universe than Shmi Skywalker. What, really? Naruto asked, stunned by the offer.
I'd like that. When do we leave? Tonight?
Whoa, Anakin said, raising his hands to slow Naruto down.
Let's not get you in too much trouble too quickly. We'll give it a week or two, then I'll tell you when, okay?
Okay, Naruto replied, nodding so fast his head was a blur.
Anakin smiled at Naruto's enthusiasm.
It only served as confirmation to him that Naruto needed a family. Anakin would never, ever understand the Jedi position on attachment, no matter how often he got lectured on it. Confident that he was doing the right thing, he walked out the door, hoping to hurry back to his quarters before Obi-Wan started to look for him. Unfortunately, it seemed he was too late on that account. Directly across the hall from him was Obi-Wan, leaning against the wall with a knowing look on his face. Anakin froze for a second, before his mind kicked into high gear. This was hardly the first, or even the 20th time he had had to come up with on-the-spot excuses for his master. "Master, there you are," he said.
"I was just about to come looking for you. What are you doing here?"
"Oh, the usual," Obi-Wan replied. "Looking for my errant Padawan, and finding him plotting to break the rules with a youngling."
"Ah," Anakin said awkwardly.
He hadn't expected that Obi-Wan had listened in on their conversation.
"You see, Master, I was just dash."
"That was a very kind thing you did, Anakin, making that offer," Obi-Wan said, cutting his Padawan off before he could dig himself deeper. Anakin just gaped at him for a few seconds, seemingly rendered speechless. "Wait, what?" he finally managed to choke out, his brain still trying to process what was happening. "I was expecting some long lecture on how attachment is forbidden and how I need to meditate on this for a week to learn my lesson."
"And a few months ago, that is what you would have received," Obi-Wan said. "So, what's changed since then?"
Anakin asked cautiously, still not quite believing that he wasn't going to get some epic lecture. Rather than answer his question directly, though, Obi-Wan chose to respond with a question of his own. "Do you remember the day your mother was brought back to Coruscant?" he asked.
Anakin snorted at that.
Of course, he remembered that day. It stood out as probably the happiest day he'd had since first coming to the temple. Flashback. It was just 4 days after Anakin had first met Naruto that he received word that his mother had been retrieved safely from Tatooine and was nearly at Coruscant. Somehow Yoda had been persuaded to allow him to greet her when she arrived, something Anakin was intensely grateful for. He knew that it was unlikely he would be allowed to visit her very often, if at all, but any time he got to spend with his mother was a precious gift. Thus, he found himself standing on a quiet landing platform with Obi-Wan by his side. "I'm surprised the council didn't send another master to make sure I didn't get too emotionally invested," Anakin said, though for once there was no real bitterness to his voice. He was in far too good a mood for that. "Oh, several of them wanted to," Obi-Wan said casually. "I convinced them that I was all the supervision you needed."
Anakin looked at his master questioningly.
"I trust you, Anakin," Obi-Wan said, sending a wave of reassurance down their bond. That simple statement, and the feelings attached to it, meant the world to Anakin in that moment. Before he could muster up a response beyond simple feelings of gratitude, the shadow of a ship drew his attention. It seemed his mother had finally arrived.
When the ramp opened, the first thing he saw was his fellow Padawan Ayla Secura and her master Quinlan Vos.
He hadn't known that they were the ones assigned to retrieve his mother, but he supposed it made sense. From what he knew, Quinlan specialized in tracking, investigation, and infiltration. It made sense that he and Ayla would be assigned to find and rescue his mother from a Hutt-controlled planet like Tatooine. He was broken from his musings when he saw who was coming down the ramp behind them. It may have been over 6 years, but he instantly recognized his mother. In an instant he was a 9-year-old boy again, and he had crossed the deck and was crushing her in a hug before she even had a chance to say anything. "I missed you, Mom," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. He dimly noticed that Ayla and Master Vos had gone over to banter with Obi-Wan, probably to give him privacy. "I missed you too, honey," she said, her own voice trembling a little.
"Look how much you've grown. You're a giant."
Pulling back from their hug, Anakin noticed that she was correct. He now stood more than half a head taller than her. It was odd for him, looking down at his mother. For a moment he felt guilty again, guilty for leaving her for all those years, a slave on that scorched dust ball of a planet. "I'm sorry I left you, Mom," he said.
"I shouldn't have left you back there. I should have come for you years ago."
Hush now, she said, cupping his cheek with her hand.
You have nothing to apologize for. You had to follow your own path, and that is all I've ever wanted for you. Seeing you freed was the happiest I have ever been, so don't you go feeling guilty for it. Okay?
Anakin smiled shakily as he felt the cold ball of guilt and self-hate he had carried for 6 years melt away, to be replaced by a soothing warmth. It felt like the weight of a star had suddenly been lifted off of his shoulders.
Okay, Mom, he said.
Good, she said firmly. Now, why don't you introduce me to your friend over there, or have you forgotten all those manners I taught you?
Anakin let out a snort of laughter upon hearing his mom's tone.
Stars, he had even missed her scoldings. Still, he supposed she was right, he was making something of a spectacle of himself. So, still grinning like an idiot, he turned and led his mother over to his master to introduce them. As he did, he heard the sound of metallic footsteps coming down the ramp. He glanced over his shoulder to see a protocol droid walking out of the ship. It was clad in dull, bronze-colored body panels, with glowing yellow eyes.
Oh, my heavens, Master Oni, it is you, it said. I knew I would see you again one day. C-3PO?
Anakin said, shocked to see the droid he had built so long ago. He hadn't thought about C-3PO in years.
You finished him?
Of course, his mother said. He's been incredibly helpful, and he was your gift to me.
How could I not? Anakin couldn't help the broad grin that broke over his face.
Finally, his family was back together.
End flashback. Snapping himself out of his memories, Anakin refocused on his master.
He sensed Obi-Wan was waiting for an answer to his question, obvious though it may have been. Of course, I remember that, Master, he said, trying to keep his tone respectful. Yes, well, ever since that day, I have noticed much of your inner turmoil has quieted, Obi-Wan said. Even though you were, and are, so obviously attached to your mother, it hasn't unbalanced you.
Quite the opposite, in fact.
As you talk with her, I could sense you finding your center more completely than ever before. Okay, Anakin said slowly, still not quite sure where his master was going with this.
Sensing his Padawan's confusion, Obi-Wan sighed.
What I am trying to say, Anakin, is that over the last few months, I have come to realize that you are probably never going to be a conventional Jedi, he said. You started your training far later than most, so I suppose it was foolish of me to expect you to conform to a typical Jedi standard in all respects. Your bond with your mother, and now with Naruto, is clearly a source of strength for you, rather than a weakness. So, you're okay with all of this?
Anakin asked, scarcely willing to believe what he was hearing.
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with you roping a youngling into your rule-breaking ways, but from what I've heard, Naruto is already something of a lost cause in that respect, Obi-Wan said ruefully. But, I am hardly going to deny you something that clearly helps you find the balance that has eluded you. Thank you, Master, Anakin said, bowing his head respectfully.
You're welcome, Padawan, Obi-Wan responded, before continuing on. I'm proud of you. Befriending Naruto and offering him the help that I should have offered you all those years ago is a mark of both wisdom and maturity. In truth, I owe you an apology for failing to recognize what you needed for so long. I can only hope that you forgive me. This once again rendered Anakin speechless. First Yoda, now Obi-Wan was apologizing to him. Who was next, Master Windu?
Gardulla? Unable to articulate a response, Anakin simply sent his feelings through the bond to his master. Gratitude, forgiveness, his own apologies for how much of a brat he had been, and above all, a desire to move forward with their newfound understanding.
Obi-Wan smiled when he felt what Anakin was sending him.
Walking forward, he crossed over to his young Padawan and clapped him on the shoulder. Let's go, he said. We still have much to do today, especially if you're going to be spending your time plotting nefariously with younglings.
Plotting? Me? Anakin said with exaggerated innocence. Why, Master, I don't know what you're talking about.
Laughing softly, the two of them walked back to their quarters. As they walked, Anakin mused that he had never felt quite so content in the temple as he did now. Somehow, knowing that his master trusted him to do the right thing, even if it was against the code, was nearly as comforting to him as knowing his mother was safe. When he entered their quarters and went to his room to unpack his gear, it felt, for the first time, like he was home. Thank you for informing me of this, Master Jedi, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine said, a weary smile on his voice.
I do hope the two younglings are safe and sound after such a misadventure.
They are, said Koth.
He had been selected to inform the Chancellor of the incident that had occurred in the Undercity.
While normally the Jedi Order kept such matters in-house, the discovery of a slaving ring with connections to Black Sun directly below the Senate district was something the Chancellor needed to be kept apprised of.
Well, thank goodness for that, at least.
And thank goodness that they managed to rescue those poor women. I look forward to seeing what they accomplish in the years to come, Palpatine said.
Please, keep me updated on your investigations into this matter.
Such barbaric practices must not be allowed to take root in the heart of the Republic.
Master Koth bowed his head at that, assenting easily.
He personally felt it was a good thing for the Chancellor to be aware of such things as this. It kept him grounded in the realities of the galaxy, rather than just the niceties of the Senate. They traded pleasantries briefly, before Eth excused himself and left the spacious office. Once the Jedi Master had left his office, Palpatine sat down at his desk, signaling his secretaries that he was not to be disturbed. He waited several minutes, until he felt the Jedi leave the building and board a speeder back to the temple. As soon as he sensed his departure, Sidious's face twisted into an angry grimace. So, that all but confirms what I suspected, he thought to himself.
That disturbance in the Force the other day was indeed this Naruto boy.
Such power. But too firmly rooted in the light to be of use, Force blasted. Sidious had felt the flare of power when Naruto had tapped into the Force 2 days ago, even sitting in his office. The power had been so strong with the light side it had actually caused him mild pain, even at that far of a remove. He had instantly suspected the boy. The Force signature matched what he had thought was Naruto's, gathered via matching his own sensing through the Force to his spy's reports of when Naruto meditated. It had been exceedingly difficult to install spy programs in the temple cleaning droids, and they would not last long, but he had gleaned enough to build a rough profile of the two newcomers to the Jedi. Both could prove troublesome to the plan given time.
Jiraiya, Sidious knew, was the more immediate threat.
Though he would need to meet the man to be certain, he suspected Jiraiya was far more talented and dangerous than he normally let on. Worse, he had been an expert at espionage and counter-espionage back in his homeland. Sidious knew he had time, while Jiraiya grew accustomed to the new technology and culture he was in, but he wasn't about to get comfortable. He estimated no more than 3 years before Jiraiya had a working intelligence network, if he was indeed as skilled as Sidious suspected him of being.
Still, he was hardly an insurmountable threat. Even now, Sidious was working on hiding any trace of his true identity even more thoroughly than before.
He had also directed Tyrannus to remove any trace of a connection between him and the clone army even now being grown on Kamino. He was not willing to have Jango Fett killed just yet, but there were alternatives to such drastic action. It had required extremely delicate use of the Force, but Jango now believed he had been hired anonymously to be the clone template. He had never been aware of the true purpose of his sons, but now there was no chance of him letting something slip. He was also, Sidious mused, still available for use as a tool in the future.
Naruto, unlike Jiraiya, was a much more difficult quantity to account for.
He was powerful, Sidious had felt that much for certain. Perhaps even as powerful as Skywalker, though given the differences in their age it was hard to tell yet. He and his godfather both had demonstrated abilities in the Force that Sidious had never seen before. Even now he was running experiments of replicating some of their unique abilities, though he had not had much luck yet. Power alone, however, was not what made the boy a potential threat. Indeed, Sidious had often toyed with the idea of turning Naruto in the future, perhaps as a backup for Anakin. Each time he felt the boy's Force signature, though, he discarded the idea. The boy was far too firmly rooted in the light. Sidious had no real knowledge of Naruto as a person, and so had no hooks he could sink into him, no levers he could play on. What's more, I can't even try to gain such knowledge yet without arousing suspicion. With Anakin, I had the excuse of being grateful for his actions on Naboo, but my relationship with him has also drawn the attention of the damned council. Trying to meet Naruto, whom Palpatine has no reason to be interested in, would only incite suspicion. No, best to just have the boy killed at the first opportunity, before he becomes a true danger to the plan. He would have to wait a while, Sidious thought, before making such a move. Best for the boy to be a Padawan with some experience before having him eliminated. Too early, and his death would seem suspicious, an outlier that would be investigated no matter the circumstances.
Jedi younglings, and even junior Padawans, rarely died.
They were too well protected, too insulated for such a loss to be anything but suspicious. Better for him to already have a dangerous mission or two under his belt, so the idea of him being at risk was more easily accepted. It would also give Sidious a chance to gauge the boy's power and skill level, so he knew what manner of force to send against him. Perhaps a test is in order. When he becomes a Padawan, Sidious mused, running through the suitable resources he had for such a thing. I am interested in studying the boy's unique powers after all, and that fool Omega has been trying to attract my attention. Yes, perhaps he may be of use to me in this. I won't reveal myself to the bumbling idiot, but I can certainly attract his attention. He has proven capable of frustrating the Jedi in the past, and it would be a pity to waste such talents.
Sidious smiled thinly at that. Already a plan was forming in his mind.
He would have to find a suitable place for Omega to do his work, one that he could control. He would also need a patsy for Omega to work under, some person or organization that could take the fall if Omega were somehow captured. When the answers came to him, he almost laughed. It was perfect, and would serve to strengthen his power base as Palpatine, along with establishing the perfect cover for the Uzumaki boy's eventual death. But all of that is a small nuisance compared to what has happened with Skywalker, Sidious raged, his teeth grinding in anger. When the so-called Chosen One had come to him, nearly 4 months ago, and told him of Yoda's decision about his mother, it had taken every ounce of Sidious's self-control to not howl in anger. Skywalker's guilt over leaving his mother, and his resentment towards the Jedi for not rescuing her, had been the keys to his plan to turn the boy. Now those things were mere memories. Most of the turmoil, the anger and fear that he had built up in Skywalker's mind, had melted away in an instant. What was worse, Palpatine had been forced to act pleased, overjoyed even, that his young friend was to be reunited with his mother. After all, Palpatine was supposed to be Anakin's friend and mentor, someone who would celebrate such a happy occasion. He'd even had to admit that perhaps the Jedi weren't as backwards and dogmatic as he had been telling Anakin they were. The words had nearly stuck in his throat. Still, perhaps it is not a complete disaster, Sidious thought, his ever-busy mind whirling away. There are, after all, many ways to turn a Jedi, especially one as emotional as Skywalker. He may no longer have that resentment, but his attachments to both his mother and that fool Kenobi have no doubt strengthened.
His hands unclenched as Sidious began to formulate a new plan.
It was not perfect, not yet, but he was nothing if not adaptable. Yes, that can be turned to my advantage, he mused. Attachments to others are such a weakness, after all, and love is so easily turned to loss and pain.
That pain will drive him towards the dark. But I will need to be patient.
The veil is not yet fully repaired, and the Jedi may receive warning if I act too hastily.
But I will act, and Skywalker will be mine.
One way, or another, I will turn him.
Chapter 14.
10 GRS, 25 BBY.
Ready, begin.
Naruto activated his training saber and sprang forward, bringing the pale yellow blade down at Ahsoka's head in a strong overhead slash. For a moment, he thought he had moved too fast for her, but then her own identical training blade hissed into life, interposing itself between his blow and her face. Grunting with effort, she pushed his blade back, nearly overbalancing him. Wary of her riposte, Naruto disengaged and leapt backwards, out of range of her saber. The opening salvo now over, they began slowly circling one another, searching for openings.
It had been 8 months since their little sojourn into the Undercity, and today marked the 1-year anniversary of Naruto and Jiraiya's arrival at the temple. In keeping with the council's plan for their training, it was time for them to be evaluated to see if they were ready to become Padawans.
Naruto had already completed the academic evaluation, much to his discomfort. Though Jedi methods of both teaching and learning had certainly improved his academic performance, classroom learning and written tests were still far from his preferred activities.
After that came the hand-to-hand combat test.
That too had been rather boring, though for very different reasons. The fact was, Naruto was simply far too advanced in taijutsu for any of his fellow younglings to offer a decent challenge. He had already been at the level of an advanced Padawan when he first came to the temple, and the last year had seen him hone his hand-to-hand skills to the level of many knights. Combined with his extensive real-world experience with melee fights, and Naruto had dominated that exam easily. Now though, he had moved on to what was by far his favorite aspect of Jedi training: lightsaber combat. Like most boys his age, let alone former shinobi, he had instantly fallen in love with the idea of lightsabers as soon as he had seen them. His opponent, Ahsoka, was perhaps even more enthusiastic about them. It was not a coincidence that Master Liam had selected her as his opponent for this spar. Conscious of the eyes of Master Windu and Master Yoda on him, Naruto refrained from his typical mid-fight banter. Even their intimidating presence, however, could not keep the smirk off his face as he prepared another attack. He just thanked Kakashi for the mask which hid the expression from his observers. It seemed Ahsoka had run out of patience too, as he had only taken a single step forward when she began her own charge towards him. They met in the center of the sparring ring, their lightsabers squealing against each other. Ahsoka's unorthodox reverse grip began to work against her here, as Naruto's greater weight and strength began to push her blade closer and closer to her face. He noticed his growing advantage, and sought to press it further. As he bore down, though, he missed the glint of mischief in Ahsoka's eyes, as well as the slight shift in her stance. Just as he felt assured of a quick victory, the force opposing Naruto's blade vanished, as Ahsoka pivoted neatly to the side. With an alarmed yelp, Naruto stumbled forward into the sudden void, desperately trying to keep his balance. All of a sudden, his danger senses flared, and he turned his clumsy stumble into a quick roll, one that carried him just beneath the yellow arc of Ahsoka's slash. As he sprang back to his feet a good 10 feet away, he cursed himself internally for his overconfidence. For all his skill in hand-to-hand combat, Naruto was still a relative novice with a blade. He had learned only the very basics that all academy students learned back in Konoha, and neither Kakashi nor Jiraiya had taught him more about swordsmanship. While he soaked up instruction on the subject like a sponge, it didn't change the fact that Ahsoka had been training with a lightsaber since she was 6 years old, and was considered something of a prodigy with a blade. His experience with hand-to-hand and knife fighting helped close the gap a lot, but he still sometimes fell for beginner tricks like that one. As he looked across at Ahsoka, he saw the cocky smirk on her face. They may have been best friends, but that didn't mean she didn't thoroughly enjoy getting one up on him. Growling slightly, though more with excitement than any real anger, Naruto leapt back into the fray. Above him, on the viewing platform, stood Mace and Yoda. Both were watching the spar with experienced eyes, picking apart techniques and analyzing attitudes. "He is impressively fast," Mace said. "Strong too, for his age and size. His technique leaves something to be desired though. Inexperienced with a blade he is," Yoda said, nodding with agreement. "But great potential he has, yes, great potential. For only a year of training, remarkable his skills are." Mace nodded silently, agreeing with his old friend. In truth, he was also impressed with Naruto. He had made a point of quietly monitoring the boy's training and progress, and he was not disappointed with what he saw. While it was true, Naruto's movements were still somewhat clumsy when compared to Ahsoka, they were nonetheless more skillful than most 13-year-old initiates, all of whom had been training with a blade for over 7 years at this point. It wasn't something he could attribute to Naruto's shinobi training either. For all his other skills, the boy had begun his lightsaber training with only the most basic of skills with a sword, most of which were not really transferable to a lightsaber. Now, scarcely a year later, Naruto was demonstrating a more than adequate grasp of the basics of Shiho. Indeed, as Mace watched, he saw the boy blend an Ataru sequence into his attack pattern. He must have learned it from a holocron in the archives. The basics of each form were available for anyone to study, even younglings. "Do you think they are both ready to become Padawans?" Mace asked. As usual, he cut straight to the heart of the matter at hand. "Jiraiya, more than ready he is," Yoda stated. "Naruto, the more difficult question that is. On physical skill alone we must not judge him." "Agreed. But I have not seen any issues with his character that would hold me back from taking him as my apprentice," Mace said. "He seems to get on well enough with his peers. I've heard that he has even helped some of his clan mates begin to create chakra. Yes, popular he is with his friends. But very emotional he remains. Impulsive. A troublemaker even," Yoda said. He was not condemning the boy, Mace knew. Rather, he was laying out all of the possible arguments in order to get a sense of Mace's thinking.
Yoda often did this, with younglings and experienced masters alike.
Mace supposed it came from being a teacher for 8 centuries.
He is emotional, true, Mace conceded.
But I do not sense the same darkness surrounding him that I once sensed around Skywalker. No, he reminds me more of Kagan in that respect. I do not believe that remaining an initiate will do him any good. What Naruto needs to learn now, he can better learn from me.
Yoda nodded in agreement with his colleague's words. Think you the others will agree? He asked.
Naruto and Jiraiya remained a regular source of controversy amongst the council. Though most of the masters had at least resigned themselves to their presence in the temple, Yoda anticipated some measure of pushback when it came to making the 2 former shinobi into Padawans. As master of the order, for now at least, Mace often had a somewhat better sense of where the council was on any given issue than Yoda did, and the aged grandmaster wanted to hear his opinion.
On Naruto, yes, Mace answered.
The boy may be a prankster, but he is still just a boy. That covers all manner of youthful indiscretions. In truth, I suspect some will be glad to see me take him in, if only so that he is not in the temple as often.
Yoda chuckled at that.
It was true, Naruto had proven to be one of the most inventive and successful pranksters the temple had seen in many centuries. He, often with the help of Ahsoka, had managed to do everything from modifying the training sabers to spray brightly colored ink all over their users to reprogramming the sonic showers in the gyms to play Corellian love ballads when the user tried to bathe. Yoda's, and Yaddle's, personal favorite, had been when he had somehow managed to install miniature squeaky pet toys in the soles of all of Master Tyen's boots. The poor man had not had time to get a new pair from the supply droids, and had been forced to attend a council meeting sounding like a rusty gear. To his credit, the Itochi master had borne it with dignity and even some humor, though he had run Naruto through a truly exhausting series of velocities as penance. Jiraiya, on the other hand, will be a topic of discussion, to say the least, Mace continued, his eyes never leaving the ongoing spar. His blatant disagreement with the code has made him controversial, and that is putting it mildly. I have had several complaints a month from various knights and even masters who have spoken with him.
As he was speaking, Luminara walked into the observation area.
The other 2 masters seamlessly moved to one side to accommodate her. Though she had never served on the council, it was not for lack of invitation, but rather lack of interest. For Luminara, the idea of being an administrator did not have much appeal. Despite this, her long service and well-known skills and wisdom had earned her the respect of the entire council.
Master Unduli, something to add, have you?
Yoda asked,
displaying his usual level of supernatural perceptiveness.
Yes, Master. I have spoken with Jiraiya several times over the past few months, she said.
We have often discussed his views on the code, and the order in general.
They are not entirely positive. That is an understatement, Mace said. He has stated flat out, more than once, that he believes that attachments and emotions can make a Jedi stronger without drawing them towards the dark.
It is a dangerous viewpoint.
I can see why you would say that, Master Windu, she said slowly, choosing her words with care. I myself had a similar reaction when I first heard his views. However, the more I have talked with him, the less sure I am that he is wrong.
At least, not completely.
Mace gave her a sharp look, but he held his tongue.
This was not some rebellious teenage Padawan, questioning the code to get a rise out of their master. This was Luminara Unduli, a Jedi Master of 45, famed for her control and wisdom. Whatever her opinions may be, he knew that she would not hold them lightly. Bearing that in mind, he motioned for her to continue. He does not believe that Jedi should necessarily be motivated by their emotions, she explained. Merely that we shouldn't be so reluctant to even acknowledge them. He believes that it is possible to use the more light emotions to fuel our use of the Force without risking falling to the dark side. I confess, I have not actually spoken to him in depth about his views, Mace admitted. But it is not his views on emotion that truly concern me. His position there is not unheard of for Jedi. Kagan and Master Fate come to mind there. It is his views on attachment that give me pause. Luminara nodded her understanding at that. Yes, there he most definitely disagrees with the code, she said. It is his belief that the best way to achieve peace between people is through mutual understanding, and that such understanding can only come about by forging strong bonds between people. From his perspective, avoiding such bonds undermines the Jedi's mission. A dangerous view, Yoda said, though he had an oddly thoughtful tone to his voice.
Many Jedi fallen because of attachment they have.
Yet, strengthen others, such things have too.
An example of this, young Skywalker is.
Speak with Jiraiya on this I will.
With that, he fell silent. Mace got the feeling that he was not willing to say more on the subject right then, so he refocused on the spar between Naruto and Ahsoka. He dimly registered Luminara excusing herself, his focus already on the ongoing spar. As he watched, Naruto launched a blisteringly fast series of strikes, sacrificing form for speed and power. Ahsoka fell back before his attack, blocking as fast as she could.
For a few seconds it seemed as if she would weather the storm intact. Despite his rapid fire blows, Naruto looked to be unable to land an actual hit on the Togruta girl.
Her small, agile form, combined with her more experienced defense, served to stymie Naruto's efforts. It took every ounce of her concentration though, and as it turned out, that had been Naruto's plan all along. As soon as he sensed that Ahsoka had focused entirely on his blade work, Naruto sprang his trap. His control over the Force may not have been especially subtle at this point, but it was adequate for what he had in mind. Reaching out, he telekinetically gripped the edge of the thin floor mat Ahsoka was standing on. With a sudden twitch of his hand, he dragged it several feet backwards across the smooth floor. Naruto had positioned himself well, and was standing on a separate mat from his friend. As such, Ahsoka found the ground suddenly, and quite literally, yanked out from beneath her feet. With a surprised yelp, she fell backwards, landing hard on her butt, bruising her tailbone. The pain of the impact tore a sharp gasp from her throat, and, more importantly, forced her eyes shut for a moment. By the time she opened them again, Naruto had the tip of his blade a centimeter from her throat.
Winner, Naruto Uzumaki, Master Liam said, signaling an end to the fight. Nice match, Naruto said, the smile audible in his voice.
He deactivated his training saber and hooked it onto his belt. Leaning down, he offered a hand to Ahsoka, who seemed torn between annoyance and amusement. Eventually amusement won, and she took his hand, pulling herself up with a smile. Still using your cheap tricks, she said teasingly. You know, one of these days you're going to run out of them.
What'll you do then?
By then I'll be good enough that I won't need them, Naruto replied easily. No matter who won their spars, their post-fight banter was always a friendly tradition with the two of them. Before he could continue though, Master Windu and Master Yoda walked onto the mat.
Well fought, both of you, Mace said, falling easily into the role of instructor.
Naruto, your speed and strength are excellent, but you rely on them too much.
Work on refining your blade work and integrating your hand-to-hand skills more.
Yes, Master, Naruto said, his voice unusually respectful. There was something about Mace Windu that demanded, and received, automatic respect, even from someone as allergic to formality as Naruto. Ahsoka, your lightsaber technique is excellent for your age, Mace said, drawing a poorly concealed grin from the orange-skinned girl. However, your focus is too narrow while in a fight.
Remember, though you may have more experience with a lightsaber, Naruto has far more experience with actual combat than you. He was able to leverage that and neutralize your skill advantage by misdirecting your focus. Do not allow yourself to be drawn into only one aspect of a battle. Keep your mind open and aware of everything that is around you.
Yes, Master, Ahsoka said, her grin fading somewhat. She wasn't thrilled with the criticism, but she took it as best as she was able. Even her fiery attitude tended to falter in the face of Master Windu.
Besides, it was good advice. So, does this mean I get to become a Padawan now?
Naruto asked, the optimism shining through his voice. HRRM, think yourself ready, do you? Asked Yoda, who had hobbled in behind Mace.
Naruto opened his mouth to say yes, before shutting it again.
His expression turned thoughtful as he considered the question more deeply. Much as Master Windu inspired respect in even the most recalcitrant youngling, so too did Master Yoda inspire introspection. He just seemed to emanate an aura that encouraged you to look deeper and think harder on his every word.
I don't know, Master, Naruto said eventually. I don't actually know what a Padawan needs to be able to do. Indeed, you do not, Yoda said approvingly, his eyes sparkling with humor.
My job it is, to know if ready to be a Padawan you are.
If know this you did, then my job you would have. Alas, my job I must keep, it seems.
Naruto frowned a little, as he tried to puzzle out whether or not he had just been insulted. In the end, he decided he hadn't been, though it was often hard to tell with Yoda. With a start, he realized the diminutive Grandmaster was still speaking. "Deliberate on this, the council will," he said. "For now, back to the creche with you both. I trust you two can make it back without somehow getting lost on Tatooine or dismantling a drug syndicate?" Master Liam asked, her voice dryly sarcastic. Despite her tone, though, there was a faint light of affection in her eyes as she looked at their two most rambunctious charges. It was tempered with no small amount of exasperation, but it was there. "Why, Master, you mistake me for some sort of scoundrel," Naruto said, his voice suffused with such innocence it would have charmed a rancor. "Ahsoka and I would never do something like that. After all, how would we end up on Tatooine, Master?" Ahsoka asked sweetly. "The ships headed to Onderon are much closer to the temple. If anything, we'd end up there." "I'm not even going to ask how you know that," Master Liam said, rolling her eyes. "On a Gran, that was quite a sight. Just go, before I find something that needs cleaning. I have to go set up next week's schedule." At the implied threat of chores, Naruto and Ahsoka scurried quickly out of the sparring hall. Ahsoka was limping slightly, her bruised tailbone making itself known. With a fond sigh, Master Liam turned back to Mace and Yoda. "I do hope you allow him to become a Padawan," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "Despite his antics, he probably has the best heart of any youngling I have ever seen. He will make an outstanding Jedi one day. As will young Ahsoka, come to think of it. The council will have to deliberate on that," Mace said. "But I personally do not see any reason to delay his advancement. With all respect to your teaching, Max, he has learned all that he can from the creche training. He needs a more personal touch now." "I agree," she said respectfully. The group of masters chatted amiably for a few minutes, before going their separate ways. Max went to go arrange the training schedule for the Clawmouse clan for the next week, while Mace and Yoda went to call a council meeting. As soon as Naruto and Ahsoka had exited the training hall and rounded the corner, Ahsoka jumped onto Naruto's back, clinging to him like a limpet. "Ack, what the hell, Ahsoka?" he yelled, stumbling at the sudden weight. "Get off." "Nope," she said cheekily, popping the P at the end. "You bruised my butt, so now you get to carry me back to the creche. Consider it your penance." "Penance? We were sparring," he yelled. "We were supposed to try and hurt each other." "Pfft, sounds like an excuse to me," she said, before pointing down the hallway. "Now, mush." "Ugh, fine," Naruto grumbled, setting off towards the creche. "Crazy girl. I should just drop you on your butt again." "Yeah, but you won't," Ahsoka responded cheerfully. "You're too much of a softie to do that. Besides, you know I'd just beat you up if you did that." Naruto rolled his eyes, but said nothing. In truth, he didn't really mind Ahsoka riding on his back too much. She weighed almost nothing and it made her smile. He liked it when she smiled. It also didn't hurt that he did, in fact, know that she would beat him up if he dropped her. She was just special like that. Still, no matter how fond he was of Ahsoka, Naruto was never one to let someone else get the last word. "It sounds to me like you're just mad that you lost the spar," he said. "Hey, I would have won if you hadn't pulled that dirty trick on me," Ahsoka complained, smacking his shoulder with one small, orange fist. "You heard Master Windu, I'm better with a lightsaber than you." "Yeah, but I'm the better fighter overall," Naruto countered. "After all, I won that spar. And using the Force isn't a dirty trick. You wouldn't have lasted 2 seconds if I actually used my dirty tricks." Ahsoka couldn't actually counter that point. It was true. She had seen some of Naruto's dirty tricks. She may have learned a few of them, but she knew that if he actually broke out his arsenal of cheap moves and dirty cheats, he would have beaten her before she could blink. She wasn't about to admit that to him though, so, in the finest traditions of reasoned discourse, she changed the subject. "Well, I'm definitely a better pilot than you," she said confidently. "What are you talking about?" Naruto asked. "I won our last speeder race." "Yeah, but only because my engines blew up at the last minute," she protested. "I was 200 meters ahead of you before that." "Maybe," Naruto said, "but after that, I won the race, while you had to be rescued by Anakin." "I did not need to be rescued," she said hotly. "I had everything under control." "Sure, you did," Naruto replied, rolling his eyes. That's why there was all that fire and smoke and screaming. Oh, shut up, Ahsoka huffed. Naruto grinned beneath his mask at his verbal victory, but wisely said nothing. If the last year had taught him anything, and it had, it was to not push his luck with Ahsoka. Revenge may not have been the Jedi way, but, as she was fond of pointing out, she wasn't a Jedi just yet. As he rounded a corner and looked down the long, straight hallway in front of him, the prankster inside of him got an idea. He nudged Ahsoka to get her attention. "Hey, how long do you think this hallway is?" he asked. Ahsoka peered around his head to look. "About 100 meters, she said. "Why do yo? Oh no. Don't you dare do wahawa." It was too late, though. Naruto flashed through 3 lightning-fast hand seals and vanished in a blur of motion. Ahsoka's shriek of surprise was still echoing down the hall when they reappeared a second later on the far end of the pathway. "You jerk!" she said angrily, as she beat his shoulders with her fists. "Don't surprise me like that." "Ah, come on Ahsoka," Naruto pleaded, his grin hidden beneath his mask. "That was my best shunshin yet. It was fun, right?" Ahsoka hit him a couple more times for good measure, before ending with an aggrieved huff. It wasn't until Naruto craned his head around to look at her that he saw the small grin she was struggling to suppress. "Ha, I knew you enjoyed that," he crowed. "Okay, maybe it was a little fun," she admitted. "But don't you go doing that without warning me, got it?" Naruto just nodded and hoisted her a little higher on his back. She hummed contentedly and rested her head on his shoulder. Before too long they arrived back at their clan creche. Naruto walked in, by now totally unself-conscious about the passenger on his back. Given that lessons were over for the day, several of their clanmates were sitting in the common area studying. Barris, who was probably Naruto's closest friend after Ahsoka and Anakin, looked up and pursed her lips at the sight of them. She shook her head disapprovingly, but Naruto thought he spotted a tiny grin on her face for a second. "Ahsoka, did you make Naruto carry you all the way from the sparring hall to here?" she asked. "Maybe," Ahsoka said as she slid off Naruto's back and onto a chair. "He deserved it though. Just because he beat you in your match doesn't mean you should turn him into a pack animal," Barris said pointedly. "Hey, he did not beat me," Ahsoka protested. "Not fairly anyways." "It's fine Barris," Naruto said, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Besides, she's so puny she weighs almost nothing. It wasn't hard to carry her." "Why you blockhead nerf-herder," Ahsoka sputtered indignantly, waving her arms with outrage. "I am not that little." "You are too," Naruto shot back. "Am not." "R2. Am not." "R2. "Quiet, both of you," Barris said sharply, fixing them with a piercing look. It was not quite a look, not yet, but it definitely had potential. "I'm trying to study for our engineering class." Naruto winced a little at her tone. Barris was usually very reserved, and she rarely raised her voice. For her to snap at him now meant he must have really annoyed her. "Sorry Barris," he said, scratching his head sheepishly. He looked more closely at her, and noticed her tensed shoulders and slightly clenched jaw. She looked like a spring wound too tightly, liable to snap at any moment. "Hey Barris, are you okay?" he asked. For a long moment it seemed as if she either hadn't heard him or was going to ignore him. Finally, however, she closed her eyes and sighed. "No," she said, her voice cracking slightly. For Barris, that small tremble was the equivalent of full-blown sobbing. "It's just, I don't get mechanics like you and Ahsoka do. I don't understand it, and I need to do well in all my studies. How am I supposed to be a Jedi if I can't even pass an initiate-level engineering class?" "I'm sure it'll be okay," Naruto said. "You're doing great in all your other classes, so what if you don't do so well in this one?" "No!" Barris hissed, actually startling Naruto and Ahsoka with the venom in her voice. "I will not just accept failure. I know I can do better than this. I will do better than this. It's just, I don't know how." At that last part Barris sounded very small and vulnerable all of a sudden. It was a bit disturbing for Naruto and Ahsoka to see, as Barris was usually an unshakable bastion of calm competence. Indeed, it was occasionally annoying how unflappable she could come off as. To see her so off-kilter was like seeing Mace Windu crack a smile, technically possible, but definitely outside the normal proceedings of the universe. However, shocked or not, Naruto was never one to let a friend suffer alone. Reaching out with one arm, he pulled Barris into a half hug. Ahsoka walked around to her other side and did the same. Barris squirmed a little at first, unused to such close contact and comfort from other Jedi. After a second or two though, she relaxed into her friend's embrace, allowing Ahsoka's soothing warmth and Naruto's boundless joy to wash over her. For several minutes they all just sat there and enjoyed each other's presence.
"How about I help you study?" Ahsoka finally asked. "I'm pretty good with electronics." Barris blinked at the offer, before shaking herself out of the haze of comforting feelings. With a twitch of her head, she snapped back to cold reality. "Don't you have your astrogation project to finish?" she asked in return, her tone indicating that she already knew the answer to the question. Well, it's not that dash."
"It is that important," Barris said firmly. "You shouldn't sacrifice your own class work just to help me with something I should be able to handle myself."
"I'll be fine, really." "It's fine, really," Ahsoka protested.
"I'll just dash." "No," Barris said, putting her foot down. Ahsoka opened her mouth to respond, but before she could formulate another comeback, Naruto spoke up. "I can help you," he said loudly, confidence practically shining out of his every pore.
"Anakin's been teaching me a lot about engineering for the past year. I bet I'm almost as good as he is by now. I could totally help you out." Ahsoka and Barris both automatically rolled their eyes at their friend's typical utter lack of humility. "Really? You're almost as good as Anakin now?" Ahsoka asked skeptically, an I-call-Nershit look on her face.
"Well, maybe not that good, but I'm still definitely the best in the clan," Naruto defended himself.
"This way, you can do your project while I help Barris with the engineering stuff." "Are you sure?" Barris asked. "I wouldn't want to inconvenience you." "What are you talking about?"
Naruto asked, seemingly genuinely confused by her question.
"You're my friend. I'll always help my friends."
The words themselves may not have seemed especially profound, but the tone Naruto delivered them in was striking to say the least. The way he said it was so sure, so absolute, so completely and utterly without compromise or question that all Barris could do for a few seconds was blink in shock. She had never heard such emotional conviction from a Jedi before, even an initiate like Naruto. A part of her said that such a display of emotion was inappropriate for a Jedi, but just right then she couldn't really bring herself to care. It was a lifeline she desperately needed, and so she clung to it regardless of the rules. Finally, after several seconds, she found her voice again.
"Thank you, Naruto," she said. "If you're willing to help me, I would like that." Naruto grinned and punched the air, chuckling happily.
As far as he was concerned, there was no greater confirmation that you were awesome at something than being able to help a friend with it. Since he liked to think he was awesome at engineering, an exaggeration, but he was getting there, and he loved helping his friends, this was basically the perfect outcome. A small part of him pointed out the irony of him of all people offering academic help to anyone, but he ignored it, chalking it up to personal growth and increased awesomeness on his part. Ahsoka snorted a bit at his over-the-top antics, before reluctantly pulling away from Barris and standing up. Channeling a year's worth of experience in dealing with the former shinobi, she lightly smacked Naruto in the back of the head, snapping him back to reality. Satisfied that he was focused again, she sighed unhappily and went off to finish her astrogation project. Though she was loath to admit it, Barris had been right when she said it was important. Naruto meanwhile, now that his head was out of the clouds, walked back over to Barris. Smiling at her, he stood next to her and gently tugged the datapad out of her hands, ignoring her sound of protest. "Okay," he said as he walked towards the door, "follow me." Where are we going?" Barris asked, confused. "I need to study." "Yeah, and the best way to do that is by doing stuff," Naruto said sagely, as if imparting the secrets of the universe to a disciple. "We're going to one of the engineering workshops. Master Liam lets me use one to work on my electronics skills, so it's fine." "Come on." Bemused, but also intrigued, Barris followed Naruto out of the creche. She wasn't entirely sure what he had in mind, but with as confident as he was, she was willing to give it a chance. He was her friend, after all. While Naruto was tutoring Barris, an event so unusual that many would have taken it as a sign of the apocalypse, the council was deliberating. The topic was one that had come up often in the last year: Naruto and Jiraiya. specifically, whether or not they were ready to take the next step and become Padawans. The debate had been going for several minutes already. They had finished reviewing their test results, and had moved to discussing what they meant. I do not think there is any question on their physical skills, Plo-kun said. Both were already at the necessary level even before they came to us. Since then, Naruto has, under Jiraiya's tutelage as well as his temple instructors, progressed splendidly. He is now at or above the level of a senior Padawan in terms of agility, hand-to-hand combat skills, strength, speed, and endurance. His lightsaber skills are far less developed, but still impressive considering how recently he began training with a blade.
And what of Jiraiya? Even Peel asked curiously. How have his skills developed?
Jiraiya was already at the level of a Jedi Master in every physical field save lightsaber combat, Plo-kun answered. He has maintained and even improved his overall fitness, and his sword skills are now near the level of a Jedi Knight.
Their physical skills may not be in question, but what of their force abilities? Koth asked.
He had not been involved with any of Naruto or Jiraiya's training, and so was genuinely curious. Strong they both are with the Force, Yoda replied.
Inexperienced they are also, especially Naruto.
Struggles with control he does, and inefficient he often is. Jiraiya, a different problem he has. Hard it is, for him to touch the Force as a Jedi does. Defaults to creating chakra he often does, when his focus is disrupted. When touch the Force he does though, strong and controlled he has proven to be.
Nodded at that, but Oppo Rancisis looked askance.
If they struggle to use the Force properly, should we really be considering making them Padawans? He asked, his tone almost disdainful.
Why not? Yaddle asked.
Our duty it is, to teach a Padawan what they need to know. If already so advanced they are physically, then more time will their masters have, to teach them of the Force.
Let us not prevaricate any longer, Yariel Poof said. The real question is, what do we think of their characters? Are they mentally and spiritually ready for this? The boy is far too emotional, Rancisis said.
He flouts the rules, pulls pranks almost weekly, and he is fiercely prone to attachment. He is also 13, Mace said.
I believe I can channel that same energy he puts into his pranks into a more useful outlet. See what you expect to see, you do, Yoda said, gently chiding the other master. Those same faults, shared by many new Padawans they are.
The purpose of an apprenticeship, getting rid of them is. Rancisis frowned, but accepted the rebuke with good grace. Yoda rarely outright contradicted a fellow council member, but when he did, it was generally taken as given that you had stepped out of line. Yoda had, at one point or another, taught every Jedi in the temple, including each and every master in that room. He respected their opinions, even and especially when they differed from his own.
However, he was not above laying down the law when he felt it necessary.
That he did so now spoke volumes. I have my own doubts about Uzumaki, but I'm not opposed to Mace taking him on at this time, CC Taiyan said. He seems to respond better to a more personal teaching style, so it may be that being a Padawan will help him shape up in a way the temple instructors could not.
My bigger concern is Jiraiya.
Rancisis, Adi Gallia, and even Peel all nodded at that.
Mace glanced at Yoda, who twitched his ears in acknowledgement.
He simply refuses to accept the truth of the code, Taiyan continued. He has challenged numerous knights and masters on the matter. His stance on emotions, his belief in attachments being a strength, these things are simply incompatible with the Jedi.
Incompatible with the Jedi, or incompatible with the code? Yariel asked quietly. Taiyan merely cocked his head questioningly, prompting him to continue.
Are the code and the order the same thing? He asked, now addressing the whole council. You speak of the truth of the code, Master Taiyan, as if it were some immutable aspect of the universe.
A year ago, I asked if we had not become blinded by dogma. Today, I ask that same question again. Surely you cannot be suggesting we change the code, Adi Gallia said, a shocked look on her face. No.
Any change to the code would obviously need to be exhaustively debated and meditated, Yariel said placatingly. I am merely pointing out that the code has changed in the past, and it would be folly to assume it will never need to be changed again. The old code was changed because it had failed us, Rancisis said.
Its permission of attachment, and even families, led many Jedi to fall. And solved this problem, the new code has? Yaddle asked, cocking an eyebrow. In the past 1,000 years, how many Jedi fallen to the dark have there been? Just since I have been a youngling there have been several, Plo-kun said. Turidi, the Elrud Marauders, Xanatos, Brukchun, and most recently Alisun cells. Before them, Volfkarko, Alia, and Kip Jean there were, Yoda said, his voice melancholy. Others too, there have been, but mate I think Master Poof's point is. And what is your point? Tyan asked the Quirmian master. Do you mean to say that some Jedi will inevitably fall? That we can do nothing to stop it? No, Yariel responded firmly. I only mean to say that the new code is clearly not perfect either. We clearly have not yet found the ideal code, so it would seem to be folly to dismiss or suppress differing opinions. So you believe Jiraiya is right in his views? Adi Gallia asked. I do not know, Yariel admitted. I have not spoken with him on the matter. I merely propose that he is not wrong simply because he disagrees with us, and that we should not be so fragile as to be frightened of his views. Has he engaged in anything other than polite and reasoned discussion when it comes to the code and views on it? There was a general shaking of heads. Despite how radical his views seemed to many of those present, none of them could recall an incident where Jiraiya had even raised his voice in anger when talking about his personal philosophy. He may have ruffled plenty of feathers, but he had done so calmly, with clear argument rather than vitriol. I see your point, Master Poof, Depa Bylaba said. But the fact remains that his views have made him a very polarizing figure in the Order. Would any master even be willing to take him as a Padawan? There was a brief pause as they considered the question. The silence was broken by the tap of Yoda's Jimmer stick on his chair. If past the trial on Ilum he does take Jiraiya as a Padawan I will, he said. Sometime it has been since an apprentice I have trained. Time to do so once again it is. There was a moment of shocked silence from most of the council as they processed the news. Only Mace and Yaddle seemed unsurprised by the news. Mace because Yoda had informed him of his plan weeks ago, and Yaddle because she knew Yoda better than any other living Jedi and had predicted this. She privately suspected he had waited until now to announce this just to see the look on the other masters' faces. Though he did not often have a chance to indulge it anymore, Yoda had a mischievous streak left over from his distant youth. It was part of why he enjoyed teaching younglings so much. Still, petty jokes on the council aside, she agreed with his decision. From the feelings of acceptance and reassurance coming from the rest of the council, she was not alone in that. It made sense, Yoda being the one to take on Jiraiya. He was well known for taking the difficult students, the misfits, the ones who didn't quite fit in with any other master. After more than 800 years of teaching Jedi, Yoda often proved able to turn even the most unlikely and misfit Padawans into excellent, if not often somewhat unusual Jedi Knights. If anyone could train Jiraiya to be a Jedi, he could. Sensing the same thing as Yaddle, Mace spoke up. I believe we are ready to make a decision, he said, exercising his authority as Master of the Order for what would likely be the last time. Let us vote. The vote went quickly. Yoda's announcement had soothed most of the objections from Tyan and Rancisis, and in the end it was unanimous. Both Naruto and Jiraiya were to be taken as Padawans. Very well. Tell them to prepare for a trip to Ilum I will, Yoda said, as the council stood to leave. Find a master to accompany them I will also. Leave Coruscant at the moment I cannot. I may have an idea of who to send with them, Yariel said, remaining behind with Yoda. When he mentioned the name, Yoda nodded sagely. Decided it is then, he said, an interesting trip this should prove to be. Chapter 15. Yoda chose to tell Jiraiya the news first, as he knew exactly where his future Padawan was. Unlike Naruto, Jiraiya had not been finished for the day after his own testing. Instead, he had a class to teach. Despite his controversial status within the temple, Jiraiya was indisputably the most experienced and skilled chakra user left in the galaxy. As such, the council had given him the task of teaching a small group of knights and masters how to use chakra. Their plan was to build a cadre of qualified chakra users to begin spreading the new, at least to the Jedi, techniques throughout the Order. He had just finished for the day, and was still in the training room when Yoda found him. Master Yoda, it's good to see you again, Jiraiya said. How did Naruto's test go? About that I wish to speak with you, Yoda said. But first, your class, how goes it?
Well, if you discount Quinlan's whining, Obi-Wan's dry wit, and the merciless teasing from Master T, everything's going fine, Jiraiya said in a mock whisper, one loud enough to carry to the others. Frankly, they all learn scarily fast. We just started on the henge today, and they'll all have it down solid in maybe 10 days at this rate. Good, Yoda said, his ears twitching in amusement at Jiraiya's words. The man may have been respectful when it counted, but he generally treated formality as something that happened to other people. A great boon to the order, these new techniques will be. Now, speak privately we must. A wordless glance from Yoda had the other Jedi quickly and quietly leaving the room. As soon as they were alone, Jiraiya fixed Yoda with a questioning gaze. Is something wrong? He asked. No. Naruto's test went well, it did, Yoda said. Decided the council has. Ready to become Padawans you two are. Walk with me to find Naruto. Tell him as well we should. Considering that he's supposed to be in the creche right now, that's probably the one place we can rule out looking for him, Jiraiya joked. Yoda's ears twitched as he chuckled in amusement. Indeed. Not in the creche he is, he said. But sense him I can. Come, much to tell you both there is. With that, Yoda turned and walked off down the hall. Jiraiya followed him, curious as to what all Yoda needed to tell them. He was tempted to ask, but the Grandmaster was never one to reveal something before he felt it appropriate. If he wanted to wait until they were with Naruto, then Jiraiya supposed he could be patient until then. Naruto had been tutoring Barris in droid mechanics for the last 2 hours or so. Of course, for Naruto, tutoring meant something rather different than it did for most people. In this case, rather than go over textbook concepts or practice test questions, Naruto had Barris disassemble and then reassemble as eclectic a collection of droids and droid components as he could find. His reasoning behind this was simple. This was how Anakin had taught him engineering, and if it had worked for him, then it should work for Barris. While this was not exactly the most sophisticated and refined teaching model, for the most part, things were going well. Ouch! For the most part. Barris was waving her fingers in the air, trying to alleviate the pain of shocking them on a live capacitor. Naruto seemed torn between sympathy and amusement, though he was tending more towards sympathy at the moment. He has made that exact mistake several times before, and it fucking hurt. He gently pulled the partially dismantled technoservice droid away from his friend's flailing appendages. The last thing Barris needed was a bruised elbow to go along with the electrical shock. Sorry about that, Naruto said, laughing nervously. I should have warned you that could happen. You okay? I'll be fine, Barris said, grimacing slightly. It was my fault anyways. I'm just so useless at this. Why can't I get it? Her voice rose to a near yell with the last question. Naruto, who hated seeing any of his friends in distress, quickly circled around the work table and grabbed Barris by the shoulders. When he turned her to face him, he could see the sheen of unshed tears welling up in her eyes. Hey! You are not useless, he said firmly, trying to project happiness and calm. Look at how many droids you took apart and put back together in the last few hours. He gestured to the work benches around them. They were covered with over half a dozen various small droids, from mouse droids to probe droids. All of them were ones that Naruto had helped Barris take apart, fiddle with, and then put back together. Could someone who's useless with electronics do all that? He asked. Barris glanced around, following his gesture. She sniffled a bit before looking back at him. I guess not, she said, before looking down. But you did most of the work on those. No, I didn't. I just gave you a few tips and taught you some tricks you didn't know. This was mostly you, Naruto said, gently tilting Barris' chin up to look him in the eyes. I believe in you, Barris. You're awesome, and smart, and one of my best friends. I know you can do this. So stop letting these droids kick your ass and start believing in yourself. Got it? Okay, Barris said, wiping her eyes and smiling. Let's get back to it. All right. Naruto cried, eyes smiling with joy at her improved state. He walked back around the work table and retrieved the technoservice droid that had shocked. He pushed it over to her, his eyes encouraging. Try taking its motivator apart again, he said. And this time, watch out for the capacitors. Yes, thank you for the advice, Barris huffed, rolling her eyes in an uncharacteristic show of sarcasm. After a moment though, she paused and looked back up at him.
Naruto, she said. Thank you, for doing this for me. For believing in me.
You and Ahsoka, you're both such good friends to me.
It means a lot to me.
You're welcome, Barris, Naruto said. I said that I'd help you with this, and Naruto Uzumaki always keeps his promises.
A good thing that is.
A Jedi's word, unbreakable it should be. Both Naruto and Barris jumped upon hearing Yoda's voice from off to one side. Turning, they saw him standing in the doorway, Jiraiya standing behind him.
Master Yoda.
Good evening, Barris stammered out, trying to gather herself. Shaking herself out of her shock, she bowed to the Grandmaster. You look surprised, Naruto, Jiraiya said, a mock frown on his face.
You didn't happen to forget my lessons on situational awareness and drop your guard, did you?
Shut up, Sensei, Naruto said, before turning his focus to Yoda.
Master Yoda, what are you doing here? Naruto, be polite.
Barris said, mildly scandalized. Calm yourselves, younglings, Yoda said, waving aside Naruto's lack of formality. It was a trait he shared with Jiraiya, and one Yoda did not feel was worth the effort of correcting.
With Naruto I must speak. News I have for him.
Yes, Master, Barris said as she began to gather her things. I'll see you back at the creche, Naruto.
Hang on, Barris, Naruto said.
He then proceeded to focus the force into his body, and made his signature hand seal.
With a poof of white smoke, a single Kage Bunshin appeared. You can keep working with my clone. Is that okay, Master Yoda?
Fine, that will be, Yoda said. Good of you it is, to help a fellow clanmate.
Now come.
With a reassuring glance to Barris, Naruto turned and followed Yoda and Jiraiya out of the engineering lab. They walked down the hall a ways, before Yoda led them into an empty classroom. With a grunt of effort, the diminutive master pulled himself onto one of the chairs, gesturing for Naruto and Jiraiya to sit as well.
Once they were all situated, Yoda began.
As I told Jiraiya, decided the council has that ready to become Padawans you both are, Yoda said to Naruto, answering his unspoken question.
In 3 days, leave for Ilum you will. Naruto's eyes immediately lit up when he heard that.
He recognized Ilum, and knew its significance to the Jedi. There was only one reason for him and Jiraiya to be going there. You mean we get to make our own lightsabers? He asked, practically shining with excitement.
Real ones? Jiraiya didn't say anything, but Yoda could sense the excitement within him as well.
For all his wisdom and experience, Jiraiya was by no means immune to the allure of building a lightsaber.
Yoda suppressed a smile at that.
He could well remember his own giddiness at building his first lightsaber, so he did not begrudge them their enthusiasm. That said, he was still supposed to set an example, and Naruto's excitement was burgeoning on getting out of hand. Calm yourself, Naruto, he said gently. An achievement this is, but a solemn occasion it is as well. A grave responsibility a lightsaber is, and centered you must be if to build one you are. To Naruto's credit, he quickly reined in his emotions to where they were merely exuberant rather than uncontrollable. Yoda nodded approvingly, while Jiraiya looked at his godson with pride. It was hardly the Jedi ideal, but it was a far cry from his near-total lack of mental discipline back in Konoha.
Starting tomorrow, meditate you will, on your lightsabers, Yoda continued. When in the caves of Ilum, find your crystals you will. But no easy task will this be. Jiraiya nodded, having expected as much.
In his experience, powerful objects such as kyber crystals were rarely obtainable without difficulty.
Naruto looked confused, and Yoda explained further.
The crystal cave, a powerful force nexus it is.
Very powerful. Tested by the force you will be.
The search for your crystal, rarely straightforward it is.
What sort of tests are you talking about, Master? Jiraiya asked. Visions, many experiences while in the cave, Yoda answered.
Others, fears they must face, or flaws they must overcome. Impossible to say for sure it is.
Only you can know what you may face. We have to meditate for 3 days? Naruto asked.
How are we supposed to do that?
Impatience do I hear, youngling? Yoda asked mildly. Naruto looked down, mollified somewhat.
Experienced Jedi, meditate for weeks they can.
Guide you through this, Master Dralig will. Much experience he has, building lightsabers. Much you will learn from him, if open your mind is. Yes, Master, Naruto said, bowing his head. The prospect of learning from Master Cin Dralig, the formidable Jedi Battlemaster, more than made up for the horror of having to spend 3 days meditating.
The man was renowned as one of the 5 best duelists in the order, and it was his job to oversee the combat training of the entire temple. Getting a chance to learn from him directly, even if it was just on lightsaber construction, was an opportunity Naruto would sooner cut off his own feet than pass up. Besides, even though it involved sitting still, something Naruto doubted he would ever be comfortable with, meditating wasn't so bad anymore. The Force was a truly wonderful thing, and even Naruto, perhaps the most easily bored being in the universe, could often spend hours just feeling it flow through him, looking at its currents. Indeed, Master Liam had sometimes privately considered that the Force's ability to get Naruto to sit still and stay quiet may just have been its most amazing quality of all.
Congratulations are in order, Yoda said.
Much progress you have made since arriving at the temple.
Remember though, always humble a Jedi should be.
Impressive this achievement is, but always more to strive for there is. Naruto and Jiraiya both bowed their heads respectfully. Through a sort of unspoken understanding, both of them tended to put Yoda into the same category as the Sandaime, a wise, kind leader, one worthy of respect.
Much like Mace Windu, Yoda's very presence tended to get even Naruto to remember his manners most of the time, though for very different reasons. While Mace projected an aura of no-nonsense toughness, Yoda radiated an air of inestimable wisdom and kindness. Now, time we have before I dismiss you, Yoda said. Teach you I can, the basics of lightsaber construction.
Further detail, Master Dralig will go into, but a head start we can get now.
With that, Yoda hopped off of his chair and walked to the holoprojector at the front of the classroom.
A few swift entries into the computer terminal beside it later, and a diagram of a lightsaber appeared on the screen.
As they watched, it rotated and disassembled itself into its individual components.
For the next hour Yoda ran through the various components that made up a lightsaber, from the simple diacium power cell to the complex intricacies of the focusing array. Though many of the parts were familiar to them, more to Naruto than Jiraiya, this was the first time either of them had seen what actually went into a real lightsaber.
Initiates were not taught how to build lightsabers until they were ready to build their own.
Pretty much all of the components could easily be acquired in the temple, and artificial crystals could be manufactured without too much trouble. As such, the council did not want overeager younglings trying to assemble potentially deadly weapons before they were ready for them. Success could result in severed limbs, or worse. Failure could result in a significant explosion, one only the crystal would survive. There were over 100 separate pieces, and as such he had little time to do more than list them and their basic function. Fortunately, one of the benefits of Jedi learning techniques was the ability to memorize large amounts of information very quickly. Jiraiya also had experience doing so as a former shinobi spymaster, and it was a skill he had begun to teach Naruto over the last few months. Between the two techniques, both of them felt confident in their ability to remember the information later. Finally, shortly after the sun had finished setting, Yoda called an end to the impromptu lesson. He dismissed them both, with instructions to get plenty of rest for the next day. Master Dralig would not look kindly upon someone falling asleep during his lessons. For some unaccountable reason, Yoda looked at Naruto while saying this, prompting the masked blonde to scratch the back of his head, blushing slightly with embarrassment. So, what if he had dozed off in his Republic government class a few times after late nights planning pranks or training with Jiraiya? It wasn't like those incidents really counted, did they? Thankfully, Master Yoda declined to comment further, and sent them both to go rest. As they rounded the corner, Jiraiya squeezed Naruto's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said to his godson. "You've come a very long way in not very much time, and I couldn't have asked for a better student. Kakashi and your parents would be proud of you too, I have no doubt." Naruto was briefly rendered speechless by this, something Jiraiya considered an accomplishment on par with surviving 10 rounds with Hanzo. His eyes began to shine with tears of joy at hearing the affirmation from his godfather. While Jiraiya was not stingy with his praise when Naruto worked hard and accomplished something impressive, he also was not exactly prolific with it either. Compliments were reserved for going truly above and beyond, and this one was made all the more special by Jiraiya's assertion that Kakashi and his parents would also share his pride in Naruto's success in the temple. This was only compounded by the fact that the Jedi, patient and skilled teachers though they were, did not really believe in praising accomplishments beyond simply affirming that one had, indeed, accomplished something. Naruto understood the reasoning behind this, and he even agreed with it for the most part. He had embraced the Jedi teaching that achievements should be their own reward, that there need be no incentive to do your best other than the knowledge that whatever you were doing should be worth doing well. That didn't change the fact that being praised by his godfather, the authority figure he respected most in the galaxy, still felt good. Naruto had received little enough praise in his life, and while he no longer went out of his way to look for it, he wasn't above basking in it when it was well earned. "Thank you, Jiraiya-sensei," he said eventually, his voice thick with emotion. Jiraiya gave him an understanding smile, one that turned into a mischievous smirk after a few seconds. "So, that young lady I saw you with in the engineering lab, Barris I think her name was, what were you two doing?" he asked, his tone suspiciously innocent sounding. "I was helping her with our engineering class," Naruto said suspiciously. "She's my friend, and she's having trouble with that class." "Oh, is that all?" Jiraiya asked, waggling his eyebrows suggestively. "It seemed to me like you two may have been a little more than just friends." "What?" "Don't be crazy, Jiraiya-sensei," Naruto yelled, waving his arms wildly. "We're just friends." "I don't like her like that." Jiraiya eyed his godson thoughtfully, before deciding he believed him. While he had no doubt that Naruto would fervently deny having feelings for any girl at this point, his prior crush on Sakura notwithstanding, he also knew Naruto well enough to tell when he was being truthful. The boy had no feelings for Barris beyond that of friendship and, if Jiraiya had to guess, a burgeoning sibling bond. "Besides, I thought you weren't a pervert anymore," Naruto continued accusingly. "I'm not," Jiraiya replied. "That doesn't mean I'm not interested in my godson's love life. I am a romantic after all. And you may not have feelings for Barris, but my senses tell me you have a crush on some lucky girl. Ahsoka maybe? You two did have quite the adventure together. You're practically inseparable too. You're delusional." "Ahsoka's my best friend, but I don't have a crush on her," Naruto said, rolling his eyes. "I haven't had a crush on anyone since Sakura-chan, and she's gone." A brief flicker of pain passed through Naruto's eyes, before he shook it off. Dwelling on the past wouldn't change anything, he told himself. Jiraiya spotted it, but said nothing. He also noticed that Naruto really seemed to believe that he didn't have any romantic feelings for Ahsoka. Jiraiya wasn't surprised. Naruto's crush on Sakura had been built more on a childish misunderstanding of romance and a desperate desire for friendship. Naruto was still too young to recognize his own feelings in that way. For that matter, he mused, so was Ahsoka. As he contemplated all the future teasing opportunities that particular situation was going to provide, he missed the twinkle of mischief that blossomed in Naruto's eyes. "Anyways, you're not one to talk," Naruto said, shaking Jiraiya out of his thoughts. "What about you and Master Unduli?" Jiraiya blinked at that, before narrowing his eyes slightly. He had not expected his teasing to be turned back on him like this. It was a good attempt, but still, the brat was way off the mark. "What are you talking about, brat?" "Sure, Master Unduli is a brilliant, beautiful woman," Jiraiya said, genuine confusion in his voice. "I am glad to be friends with her, but that is all we are. I may not agree with the code, but she does, and that is her choice. Regardless, my heart has always belonged to Tsunade, even if I was a fool about it." Now it was Jiraiya's turn to feel a flash of pain and bitter regret. Grateful, for once, for the emotional control techniques Master Yoda had taught him, he accepted his grief and released it into the Force. Jiraiya may not have liked the Order's stance on emotions in general, but he wouldn't deny that their techniques were useful for maintaining a clear head until he could properly deal with his emotions. It was just that last part that the Jedi seemed to have issues with. Naruto, sensing his godfather's distress, grasped the hand that was still on his shoulder and gave it a squeeze. They spent a silent moment mourning the loss of their home, before Jiraiya gave Naruto an encouraging smile. "All right, brat, I'm done teasing you. Go get some rest, tell your friends the good news," Jiraiya said. "Okay, Jiraiya-sensei," Naruto replied. "See you tomorrow." As soon as he was done talking, Naruto took off running down the hall. He was bursting with excitement, eager to tell all his friends his impending ascension to vaunted Padawanship. Without breaking stride, he summoned a Kage Bunshin. It peeled off down a side corridor before jumping up to the ceiling to crawl into a vent. It would sneak through the temple in order to tell Anakin the news as well. Or at least he hoped so. His clones had occasionally deviated from their instructions before, wreaking all manner of unexpected havoc. Naruto could only hope this clone didn't go mad and try to jump scare a master or something equally ridiculous. He had felt the clone he had left with Barris dispel nearly an hour before, Master Leem having tracked them down and enforced their curfew. Fortunately, she had apparently already known that Yoda was talking to him, as she had immediately identified the clone as such. Sadly, by the time he arrived at the creche, his fellow clan members had already gone to bed. Master Leem, however, was waiting for him in the common area.
"Good evening, Naruto," she said. "I assume it's really you this time."
"Yeah, it's me, Master,"
Naruto said, bouncing with excitement. "Did Master Yoda tell you the news? I'm going to be a Padawan. I get to build my lightsaber in a few days?"
"I did hear something to that effect," Master Leem said dryly, before giving him the grand equivalent of a gentle smile.
"You have done very well as an initiate, Naruto. I have no doubt you will make an extraordinary Jedi Knight in due time." Naruto blinked at the unexpected praise.
While Master Leem had always been kind and matronly, it had been the distant, reserved kindness that so often characterized the Jedi. She rarely displayed overt emotion or affection towards her charges, though she was known to be fiercely protective of them. To hear her express such faith in him meant nearly as much to Naruto as Jiraiya's words had. "Thank you, Master," Naruto said gratefully. Leem walked over to him and fondly tousled his hair. "You're welcome, Naruto," she said.
"Now go to bed. I'm sure you have a busy day tomorrow."
Naruto was about to protest about how he was not tired, before he was cut off by an enormous yawn. Sighing, he swallowed his protests and walked off to bed.
Less than a minute after laying down, he was fast asleep.
The next day was both much harder and much easier than Naruto had been expecting. On the one hand, Master Dralig was a hard taskmaster, even when it came to meditation and lectures. Naruto, not being especially comfortable with either, found himself in the unusual position of being simultaneously bored near to catatonia and ready to burst with excess energy.
On the other hand, he was learning about lightsabers.
Not how to use them, which he had already begun to learn, but rather the secrets of their construction. This subject landed neatly in the sweet spot between cool weapons and interesting mechanics, and as such was something Naruto found fascinating, even with the lectures and meditation. Master Dralig, despite being nearly as stern as Master Windu, was also a pretty good teacher, and he quickly recognized Naruto's need for more hands-on learning. As such, once he was satisfied that both Naruto and Jiraiya had memorized all the different components of a lightsaber, and could identify them on sight, he switched tracks. He gave Naruto a pile of materials and had him set about assembling them into a lightsaber. Its crystal and power cell were both dummies so as to prevent any dangerous accidents, but it served as a useful proxy for the real thing. "You will assemble your final blade using only the Force," he said, watching as Naruto carefully adjusted the energy modulation circuits on his practice model. Normally this would be done aboard the Crucible, under the tutelage of Professor Huyan, alongside your clanmates as part of a gathering. Your journey, however, will be different.
"How so?" asked Jiraiya, who was studying the technical diagrams on a holoprojector.
"You will be searching for your crystals and building your lightsabers the same way more experienced Padawans, knights, and masters do," Dralig replied. "You will enter the crystal cave with whatever supplies you will need to build your lightsaber, and you will face whatever trials the Force gives you to claim your crystal. You will then build your lightsabers within the cave, using the Force to assemble them."
"That doesn't sound too different from the gathering," Naruto remarked. "What's the big deal? Aside from the fact that you will be building lightsabers alone, unsupervised, and far from any mechanical or medical assistance?"
Dralig remarked dryly, earning an embarrassed flush from Naruto.
"The biggest difference is time. Pulling the Crucible off its normal training route to host a gathering for just you two would be inefficient and unnecessary.
This way takes longer though, which is why gatherings are typically held for larger groups.
The Force Nexus in the caves also helps you form a bond to your blade while assembling it."
For the latter half of the day, he had Naruto and Jiraiya meditate on their future lightsabers. Not so much on the design, but rather on what a lightsaber meant to them. While the Jedi doctrine gave guidance on what a lightsaber symbolized and how it was to be viewed, each Jedi had a unique relationship with their blade. For some, it was a rarely used tool, something they carried as an almost reluctant afterthought. For others, it was a weapon to defend the innocent and defeat the wicked. Both Naruto and Jiraiya trended towards the latter view, to Master Dralig's complete lack of surprise. While Jiraiya believed in peace as only a warrior could, a view he had passed on to Naruto, neither of them were ever going to be labeled as pacifists. Naruto in particular held a deep-seated conviction that those who had power also had an obligation to use that power to help others. Jiraiya's beliefs were tempered by decades of experience and pragmatism, but at his core he felt the same way. Thus, overall, the day's lessons had conspired to leave Naruto tired and hungry, but also excited, or rather even more excited than normal. This was the state he was in when Anakin walked up to him in the dining hall. "So, I heard that my little brother is going to become a Padawan in a few days," Anakin said, sitting beside Naruto. "They're just letting anyone in these days, aren't they? Well, they let you in, didn't they?" Naruto shot back, slipping easily into their usual banter. "Besides, what do you mean you heard? I'm the one who told you." "Well, yeah, but if I say it like I did, then I sound well informed and wise," Anakin defended, giving Naruto's shoulder a friendly bump. "Pfft, wise? You?" Naruto asked incredulously. "Has anyone fallen for that yet? Like, anyone?" "Don't worry about it," Anakin said, before hastily changing the subject. "Anyway, I came over here to invite you and Jiraiya to celebrate with me and my mom when you guys get back. She'd skin me if she found out I let you two become Padawans without giving her a chance to throw a feast." Naruto, who was far more perceptive than most people gave him credit for, recognized the subtext of "I want to celebrate my honorary uncle and little brother's accomplishments, but I'm not going to say that out loud because it's embarrassing." I smiled and nodded rapidly. "That sounds great," he said eagerly, only just remembering to keep his voice down. "I'll see you then." "You bet," Anakin said. "You know this means you aren't allowed to fail now. My mom will kick your ass if you do." "Me, fail?" Naruto said, as if the idea was too foreign to grasp. "You're funny, Anakin. I'll see you when I get back. You can drool over my awesome lightsaber." The two friends laughed, and Anakin hugged his younger brother. They were both guys, so the hug lasted only a brief second, but it conveyed what it needed to. Love. Encouragement. Happiness. All the pride that comes from watching someone you've mentored truly start to come into their own. All in all, it was a pretty talkative hug. The next day proceeded much as its predecessor had. Once again, Naruto and Jiraiya spent hours meditating on their lightsabers, interspersed with further lessons on how to actually build them without getting blown up. Master Dralig was very big on his students not blowing themselves up by accident. Given Naruto's somewhat checkered history when it came to his own safety, Jiraiya was only too happy to relate at length. Dralig felt the need to repeat this lesson multiple times. For once, Naruto wasn't minded to protest a repeated lecture. While he was fairly confident in his healing abilities, or rather the Kyuubi's ability to heal his body, he was not eager to test if they extended to fixing an acute case of being blown the fuck up. The darkly amused chuckle he heard from the seal did nothing to change his mind about this. The next day's training was much the same as the previous two. The only difference was that Master Dralig had both Naruto and Jiraiya practice assembling a dummy lightsaber using the Force. It was delicate work, requiring complete focus and careful maneuvering. It was also made all the harder by the fact that the generic components they were practicing with were not truly theirs, especially the crystals. They had no bond with them, and so had less insight into how they wanted to go together. However, as Dralig told them, if you can build these things with the Force, then you'll have no problem building your real lightsabers when the time comes. After a long day of practice, both Naruto and Jiraiya were able to assemble a lightsaber with the Force with an acceptable degree of competence. Satisfied that his latest pupils were not going to blow themselves to pieces, Dralig signed off on their trip to Ilum. As such, Naruto and Jiraiya were standing in one of the temple hangars, waiting for their ship to be fueled and prepped. Jiraiya was giving his godson the stink eye, while Naruto looked supremely proud of himself. "How? Just how, brat?" Jiraiya asked. "How what, Jiraiya-sensei?" Naruto asked back, his voice a symphony of innocence. Jiraiya's left eye twitched, and he seemed to be restraining himself from throttling his student.
You know damn well what, you cheeky little. Jiraiya growled.
My entire room was painted orange when I came back to it after Master Drelig dismissed us.
Every single square centimeter, furniture included. How? And more to the point, why?
Oh, that, Naruto said casually.
Well, since I'm about to become a Padawan, I'm probably not going to be able to pull very many pranks in the future.
So, I decided I might as well get one last big one in before then.
And you decided to target me?
Jiraiya asked.
Naruto just gave a dismissive snort.
Please, whoever said I just did your room, he asked, seemingly offended that anyone would think he would aim so small. You were just an afterthought, really. I had some extra time after I handled the rest.
I really love my clones sometimes.
Jiraiya let out a long-suffering sigh and rubbed the bridge of his nose.
Do I even want to know what your main target was? He asked. Before Naruto could answer, a familiar female voice spoke up from behind them.
I think I might have some idea on that, the voice said.
Naruto and Jiraiya turned around to see Luminara standing behind them, an unreadable expression on her face.
Earlier today, something happened during a council session, she continued. When the council went to convene, they found that the entire inside of the tower had been painted bright orange. Various messages, such as "Don't be so bloomy and cheer up," sourpusses were painted around the tower as well.
You wouldn't happen to know anything about this, would you, Naruto?
They take everything way too seriously, Naruto said, shrugging. It's bad for their health. I figured I should brighten the place up a bit, try to lower their stress levels. I care like that.
Luminara cocked an eyebrow.
Naruto almost thought he saw one corner of her mouth twitch upwards for a brief instant, but he dismissed it as a trick of the light.
Is that so? Luminara asked flatly.
And why paint Jiraiya's room?
Was that also out of concern for his health?
No, that was just because he deserved it, Naruto said without hesitation, before continuing in a stage whisper.
He's really annoying sometimes.
This time there was no mistaking it.
Luminara definitely almost smiled when he said that.
Indeed, when Jiraiya made a choked sound and face vaulted, she seemed to have to repress a laugh. Yes, I had noticed that at times, she said casually, earning a betrayed look from Jiraiya. Still, you shouldn't do such things. It's unfair to the cleaning droids, having to clean up his room like that.
What is this, pick on Jiraiya Day? Jiraiya asked, moping dramatically.
I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about, Luminara replied. Now, I believe our ship is ready.
Wait, what do you mean our ship? Jiraiya asked.
I am going to be supervising your trip to Ilum, Luminara replied. Normally Master Yoda does this, but the Senate has requested his advice on their most recent trade negotiations, so he cannot leave Coruscant right now.
He asked me to go in his place. I see, Jiraiya said. Well, I look forward to your guidance then. Now let's go, before Naruto explodes from impatience.
Indeed, Naruto was almost blurring near the edges, he was twitching so fast from his eagerness to be underway.
Luminara shook her head at his lack of patience, but led them aboard the ship nonetheless.
She took the pilot's seat and went through the takeoff sequence with practiced ease. 5 minutes later, they were clearing the upper atmosphere.
She prepped the navicomputer and laid in their course.
As soon as the jump was plotted, she activated the hyperdrive. The white pinpricks of the stars smeared across the inky black of space, before dissolving into the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace travel.
Chapter 16. The journey to Ilum took nearly 2 whole days.
Though it was not nearly as isolated as Tython, it was still deep within wild space. As such, there were no major hyperspace lanes going near the system, forcing them to travel relatively slowly, with frequent stops to adjust course. While he had known this prior to the trip, the reality of 2 days spent in the relatively small confines of a T6 shuttle was beginning to wear on Naruto. Erg, he groaned as he once again failed to sink into a meditation.
This is crazy. I can't move on this ship. Why do the Jedi have to get their crystals from some planet in the middle of nowhere? Aren't there any closer planets to get Kyber crystals?
Luminara, who had been meditating across from him in the small mess area, sighed and opened her eyes. Yes, there are several other places with known Kyber deposits, she admitted.
However, none of them are as strong in the Force as the crystal caves of Ilum. You must have patience, Naruto. It is one of the most important aspects of being a Jedi. Naruto grimaced, but nodded.
Yes, master, he said, before trying to meditate once more. His efforts were in vain, however. He simply had too much energy, and with no way to burn it off while on the small shuttle, he was unable to find the inner peace necessary to sink into the depths of the Force. After several more minutes of trying, he grunted in frustration again. I'm sorry, master, but this is just impossible, he said, trying and failing to keep his irritation out of his voice. Luminara looked at him thoughtfully before nodding her head. Very well, she said. Why don't you go practice building your lightsaber some more? That should give you something more tangible to focus on.
Yeah, that'd be great,
Naruto exclaimed, before wincing apologetically at Luminara's raised eyebrow.
I mean, thank you, master.
I'll just go do that.
Smooth kid.
Real smooth, came Jiraiya's voice from the door. I swear, every time someone gives you a lesson on manners and etiquette, it just bounces off that thick skull of yours.
Naruto turned to face his godfather, rolling his eyes.
You're just still sore because of those times the toads smacked you in the head, he said accusingly. Jiraiya frowned and rubbed the back of his head in remembered pain. He swore he could still feel a lump the same size and shape as Fukusaku's staff. You're damn right, I'm still sore about that. It hurt, he shot back. Not to mention all the times you pissed off Tsunade and she took it out on me.
Do you have any idea how hard she punches when she's mad?
Naruto just shrugged, as if to indicate he didn't care. You know, for being the greatest shinobi in the whole galaxy, you sure do whine a lot, he said.
Jiraiya face-vaulted, while Luminara gave a light snort which sounded suspiciously like a suppressed laugh.
Naruto, probably wisely, chose to take the opportunity to slip out of the mess and back to his cabin. He passed Jiraiya on the way out the door, and the older man quickly moved to sit in the seat Naruto had just vacated.
He grumbled under his breath, and Luminara gave him a pointed look. Cheeky little brat, Jiraiya muttered, though without any real ire. I doubt he'll ever learn manners. He is certainly rough around the edges, Luminara said evenly.
I had thought he was better at meditating than that. Normally he is, Jiraiya said. But he has so much energy that he needs to burn it off before he can focus on something like meditation.
In a ship this small, he has no way to do that, Luminara finished, nodding in understanding. I see.
Well, he is hardly the first youngling with that issue. There are a number of techniques that can help him deal with that. I'm sure whoever takes him as their Padawan will quickly teach him some of them, so they don't get driven to distraction by his hyperactivity. You mean, Jiraiya said with a snort of amusement.
Luminara gave him a tolerant look before shaking her head. Now, he isn't that bad, she said. Merely young and energetic.
He has great potential.
Jiraiya raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. Careful now.
It almost sounds as if you think he might make a good Jedi one day, he said. I do believe that, she replied.
I think both of you will make excellent Jedi. This time Jiraiya's surprise was genuine.
While they had developed something of a teasing friendship over the past 8 months, Jiraiya had never really gotten the impression that Luminara entirely approved of him and his ideals. She certainly never said it aloud, but there was often a certain reticence, almost reluctance about her when they talked. Curious, he told her as much. It's not that I disapproved of you, but rather that I was unsure of what I thought of your beliefs, Luminara said. When we first met, you challenged some of the core tenets of the Jedi Order, our abstention from attachments and strong emotions. You were quite passionate in your beliefs, if I recall.
Jiraiya nodded, thinking back to their first meeting.
He had been quite outspoken with her then, even more so than with most Jedi. He supposed it had to do with how willing she had been to hear him out. She hadn't dismissed him as dark or rebellious, even though she had clearly been confident in her own position. That confidence had sparked a fire in him, a determination to meet her unspoken challenge. I admit, at first I thought your beliefs were mistaken, dangerous even, Luminara continued. But then, just a few short hours later, Naruto went and demonstrated that it was possible to draw strength from your attachments and emotions without inviting the dark side in. Shortly thereafter, I found out that Skywalker was allowed to visit his mother, and that rather than exacerbate the conflict within him, it calmed it.
Having my ideals challenged like that was Disconcerting? Jiraiya asked gently. Luminara nodded.
Yes, very. Our later talks only further convinced me that the Jedi Code is missing something, that it fails to address the whole picture as it were, she said. I still am not sure if you are wholly right, but I am sure that both you and Naruto will do great things as Jedi. Jiraiya blinked dumbly for a second, before a broad smirk crossed his face. Well, with a vote of confidence from a woman as wise and beautiful as you, I suppose I can't possibly fail, he said. Luminara rolled her eyes, ignoring his compliment. Ever since she had met him, he had regularly given her similar compliments. She supposed it was his way of teasing her for asking about his past as a pervert. Regardless, comments on her appearance meant little to her. Jiraiya's smirk dissolved into a smaller, but far more genuine smile. He reached out and gently squeezed one of hands. In all seriousness though, thank you, he said, the teasing quality gone from his voice. I have a great deal of respect for you, Luminara, and your belief in Naruto, and I means a lot. I'm also glad to hear that you've taken the time to think about my beliefs. It's more than a lot of Jedi have done. You're a good friend, and I am glad to know you. Now it was Luminara's turn to blink in surprise. She didn't quite know how to respond to his statement. Jiraiya was very rarely so genuine, and something about his gratitude made her feel as if she couldn't simply brush it off as her merely doing her duty as a Jedi Master. She wasn't sure what to make of it, but she decided being forthright was probably the best course. You're welcome, Jiraiya, she said, giving his hand a squeeze in return. You have been a good friend as well, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Jiraiya's smile broadened upon hearing that. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but shut it again without speaking. Pain and grief swirled behind his eyes like a sudden storm, before they were hidden behind one of his masks. This one displayed none of the genuine forthrightness that had been apparent not 10 seconds earlier. Now Jiraiya once more seemed the vaguely disinterested and sarcastic man he so often pretended to be. Well, I'd best check on Naruto before he inadvertently blows us all to pieces, Jiraiya said, the humor in his voice very nearly passing as genuine. I'll see you later, Luminara. Thanks for the talk. Luminara made to ask what had perturbed him so, but he had already left the mess. She frowned, but elected not to pursue him. For all his talk of building bonds with others, Jiraiya could guard his own privacy more fiercely than a rancor did its cave. He would talk to her when he was ready. Or he would not. It was all the same to her, she told herself. Luminara ignored the slight niggle of pain that bit at her. For some reason, having Jiraiya shut her out like that, even if she didn't know why, had hurt a little. Closing her eyes, she reached out to the Force, seeking her balance once more. She was a Jedi Master, and being unbalanced by emotional pain was unbecoming of her, she thought. For once, however, the feeling failed to vanish so easily. As soon as the door hissed shut behind him, Jiraiya stopped dead in his tracks and closed his eyes. He took a deep, shuddering breath, held it for a minute, before exhaling slowly. Stupid, 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 he thought, his mind a whirl of chaos. Of all the dumb things I could let myself do, developing feelings for her has got to be up there with the worst of them. Or down there, I suppose. When he had grasped Luminara's hand, his intentions truly had been nothing more than to express his gratitude to her for her friendship. She had become both a good friend and an excellent verbal and physical sparring partner. Yet when he had actually been there, holding her warm hand, looking into her shockingly blue eyes, he had felt the stirrings of something familiar. Affection. More than just what he would feel for a friend. It wasn't love. Not yet. Jiraiya was no child, falling in and out of love as if someone had installed a revolving door, but he also was no fool. He had to face facts, and right now the fact facing him, and probably laughing its wretched ass off while doing so, was that he was developing romantic feelings for one Luminara Unduli. And that was unacceptable. You'd think after nearly 40 years of pining after Tsunade I would have learned my lesson, but no, he thought bitterly. No, I just had to start falling for yet another woman who won't have me. Ha! It seems my list of failures is about to grow longer still. A muffled curse from the cabin where he knew Naruto to be shook him from the black mire of his thoughts. It sounded as if his godson had flubbed his practice. Knowing him, Jiraiya had no doubt that he had gotten impatient and tried to rush the process. Judging by the faint sounds of metallic clicking and whirring, he had started again, hopefully with a modicum more of patience. Staring at the door, a fond smile crept stealthily over Jiraiya's face, heedless of his prior grim mood. It seemed Naruto's ability to bring out the best in people extended even to those he wasn't talking to, or even aware of. Jiraiya was consistently astonished at how hard it was for anyone, himself included, to remain ill-tempered while around the hyperactive young shinobi. Giving the door one last look, Jiraiya squared his shoulders and nodded his head firmly. So, what if I'm destined to eternally fail at love? Jiraiya thought. So be it. I've been a failure at that, and damn near everything else, for over 40 years now. I'm used to it. I only need to succeed at one thing. Naruto. I won't let him down again, as I have so many others. Whatever feelings for Luminara I may have buried in my heart can stay there. For now, I have a godson who I have to help grow into the best damn Jedi this galaxy has ever seen. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. It was nearly 6 hours later that they finally dropped out of hyperspace for the last time. Naruto was in the cockpit, eagerly awaiting his first glimpse of a new planet since arriving on Coruscant a year prior. As he watched the blue tunnel of hyperspace fade into smeared star lines before resolving into a clear view of the fabled world, his first reaction was one of disappointment. Compared to the intricate, globe-spanning cityscape of Coruscant, or the beautiful, eclectic variety of Tython, Ilum seemed plain, almost boring. It was mostly frozen, with vast swaths of blue-white ice fields stretching from both poles, encircling most of the planet in a frigid embrace. Nearer to the equator, a few dark green bands of what were presumably forests girdled the planet's warmer climes. Even from space though, Naruto got a sense of stillness, of emptiness. This was a cold, dark, unmoving world, frozen not only in ice, but also seemingly in time. Before he could give voice to these initial impressions, however, Naruto felt the presence of the icy planet wash against his force senses. He had not even needed to consciously reach out with the force to feel the vast beacon of power that emanated from the planet below. In stark contrast to its rather forbidding physical appearance, Ilum's force presence was bright and clear, shining sharply against the backdrop of empty space. It rivaled even the presence of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant for sheer power and luminance. Unlike the temple, however, Ilum's force presence was much more evenly distributed throughout the planet. There were areas where it concentrated, certainly, those spots glowing like hot embers against a warm background. Even away from those places though, the planet just shimmered in the force, like a vast diamond lit from within. Whoa, Naruto breathed. It's amazing. It's so bright. Indeed, Luminara replied as she piloted their shuttle towards the icy surface. Ilum has always been exceptionally powerful in the Force. That is why the Jedi Order has always favored using Kyber crystals found here, rather than those available on Adega or Jeddah. Naruto just nodded silently, still in awe of the feeling of the planet. As they descended, he noticed that Luminara was piloting the ship towards the largest and brightest of the embers. Its power felt at once as high as a mountain peak and as deep as an ocean trench. The closer the ship got to it, the more overwhelming it felt, almost as if he were drawing nearer and nearer to a sheer cliff face, a perilous drop into the unknown mere meters away. Finally, he was forced to draw his sense back somewhat, lest he pitch off the edge. "Careful, youngling," Luminara warned. "You are still inexperienced with the Force. Places such as this can overwhelm you if you aren't ready for them. When the time comes, reach out slowly, and let the Force be your guide." "Yes, Master," Naruto said, feeling somewhat humbled in the face of such a Force nexus as this. He suddenly had a lot more respect for the various Jedi Knights and Masters he had met. If powers such as this were the sort of things that they could handle so casually, then there was clearly even more to them than he had previously thought. The thought that he would one day join such an elite group filled him with excitement. The rest of the landing cycle was silent, with Naruto eagerly contemplating the challenge ahead of him, while Luminara focused on navigating the often treacherous winds of Ilum's gelid atmosphere. Fortunately, she proved to be more than equal to the task, and a few turbulences filled minutes later the shuttle touched down, the landing struts crunching through the deep snow. Looking out the front viewport, Naruto could see what he assumed was their destination. A few hundred meters away from their landing site, a large cliff face rose from the windswept tundra. It stood as an imposing frozen monolith, the blue-white gleam of the icy rime standing in stark contrast to the smooth gray of the bare stone.
Though the cliff appeared barren and featureless at an initial glance, the Force told a very different story.
Somewhere beyond those blocks of ice and stone lay the source of the power Naruto could feel. Even so, Naruto was still surprised, and a little disappointed, at the lack of any obvious entrance to the temple. "I thought there was supposed to be some huge, ancient Jedi temple here," he said, frowning suspiciously. "All I see is a bunch of frozen rocks."
"You're not messing with me, are you? Have patience, Naruto," Luminara said, dryly amused at Naruto of all people suspecting a prank. "I know you can feel the nexus behind the cliff. Trust that we are in the right place."
Naruto squinted at her for a second, before deciding to accept her words.
"Yes, master," he said. "Good. Now go get your gear.
We do not want to waste time." Shivering with excitement, Naruto ran to the entrance ramp, stopping only to grab a parka to ward off the bitter chill beyond the ship's hull and his pack full of supplies. He had all the equipment needed to build his lightsaber in his small backpack, save for the vital crystal. Once at the hatch, he saw Jiraiya standing near the exit, his own parka already zipped up. Naruto gave his godfather a concerned look, as the man had been unusually quiet for the last leg of their journey. Jiraiya clearly spotted the look, as he rolled his eyes and poked him in the shoulder. "What's with the frowny face, brat?" he asked.
"Focus up, we've got important stuff to do." Before Naruto could reply, Luminara walked up, also wearing a thick coat.
"We should go," she said. "It's best if we get this done before dark. Taking off at night is impossible on island with the blizzards, and spending the night in the temple isn't exactly comfortable."
Naruto nodded and slipped his parka on over his tunic and flak vest.
While he was far less bothered by heat and cold than even most Jedi, even he would find the temperatures on Ilum intolerable.
As soon as he was zipped up, Luminara opened the hatch to the outside.
All thoughts of Jiraiya's odd behavior were instantly forgotten as the wind whipped them. Cold, loud, white. Those were the thoughts that went through Naruto's head as he hustled down the ramp and onto the snow-covered ground. Every exposed bit of flesh instantly screamed in protest of the biting cold. His eyes squinted against the wind which drove snowflakes into his skin like a cloud of biting flies. Even through the insulating material of his parka, Naruto could feel the chill of the air. "Is it always this bad here?" he heard Jiraiya ask. "No," Luminara answered. "It's the middle of winter here right now. Normally younglings only come during the spring and summer." "I guess we're just lucky then," Jiraiya griped, pulling his hood tighter over his head.
Naruto couldn't help but agree with his sentiment.
This place sucked. Luckily for them, it was a fairly short walk to their destination. Even with the driving wind and cold clawing at them and slowing them down, it only took 10 minutes before Luminara held up her hand to stop their march, halting them a few meters from the base of the cliff. As she did, Naruto felt the texture of the ground beneath the snow change, becoming smoother. Upon closer inspection, he saw the vague outline of a circular carving embedded in the rock beneath the snow.
He could make out faint traces of intricate carvings, but the covering of snow made discerning any details impossible.
"We're here," Luminara said as she knelt to dust off part of the carving.
"We must work together to access the temple. Reach out with the Force and let it guide you. You'll know what to do."
Eager to be out of what was rapidly becoming a blizzard, both Naruto and Jiraiya closed their eyes and did as she instructed, feeling out with their Force senses. As soon as they contacted the nexus of the temple, Luminara's words became clear. Like water flowing through channels carved in rock, their power was guided through paths in the Force until it met what felt like a lever, waiting to be pulled. Working together, along with Luminara, they quickly managed to pull it.
As soon as they did, a bass rumble boomed forth from the cliff.
Shedding their coating of snow, the icy blocks of stone before them began to shift, sinking into unseen shafts in the ground.
As they descended, they revealed the true entrance to the temple.
2 large slabs of rock, carved from the cliff face and polished smooth, rose above them. A circular cutout adorned the top third of the facade, and a thin dark line marked the separation between the two halves. In less than a minute the rumbling ceased, and the entirety of the entrance was exposed.
"Well done, both of you," Luminara said. "Now follow me."
She led them through a doorway at the base of the vast stone carvings that marked the entrance to the ancient Jedi stronghold. As soon as they were out of the reach of the wind, the difference was apparent. The air may have been barely any warmer, still well below freezing, but without the constant assault of the wind, the cold was far easier to tolerate. The doorway led to a long hallway chiseled into the side of the cliff. They followed it as it speared deeper into the rock formation, until it opened upon a vast cylindrical chamber, clearly hewn from the solid rock of the cliff. A set of 4 enormous statues, all hooded and cloaked, stood guard at equal intervals throughout the cavernous room. Each carried a stone lightsaber, held as if in salute to those who stood before them. Above their heads hung a large crystal, suspended within an ancient-looking mechanism, with a number of smaller crystals around it. Together, the crystals and the ice served to cast the entire chamber in a blue glow. Lowering his hood, Naruto took in the sight of the ancient temple. Now that he was actually inside of it, he could feel how different it was from the Jedi temple on Coruscant. There the Force was warm, welcoming, and vibrant with the echoes of the many millennia worth of lives that had been lived in its halls. Standing in the Coruscant temple felt like standing in a forest at the height of spring. Compared to that, standing here Naruto felt more as though he were in a very small boat sailing upon a deep, calm ocean. It was pleasant enough, and there was no obvious danger, but it was clear that this was not a place for beings to live. To visit from time to time perhaps, to learn from certainly. But not to live. The Force shone here like a crystal, with cool, clear light. It was bright, yes, but also harsh and unforgiving. Across from them stood another doorway, this one blocked by a wall of ice. Naruto walked towards it, carefully extending his senses, mindful this time of Luminara's earlier warning. "That's the route to the crystal cave, isn't it?" he asked. "How are we supposed to get through there?" "Yes, it is," Luminara responded, nodding approvingly. "As for how you two are to gain access, just watch." With that, Luminara waved one hand, reaching out with the Force. A shutter opened in the wall above them, casting a ray of sunlight on the large, central crystal. The gem glowed a brilliant yellow, scattering beams of light all around. Another gesture served to shift one of the smaller crystals into the path of one of the beams. It redirected it into the carved stone frame surrounding the sheet of ice blocking their path. The whole lintel lit up blue, and the ice rapidly began to melt and flow down the steps. In only a few seconds the doorway was clear, while the meltwater drained out of sight. "Through that passage lies the crystal cave," Luminara said. "As you can see, the entrance is already freezing over again." She spoke the truth. Even as they watched, Naruto and Jiraiya could see the wall of ice begin to slowly reform from the top of the carved doorway. "At this time of year, the entrance will freeze over completely before you manage to find your crystals and build your blades," Luminara continued. "Once you have completed your lightsaber you will be able to use it to cut through the ice. Until then, you will be trapped inside the caves." Jiraiya looked skeptical as he examined the entranceway. "I'm pretty sure a good Rasengan would smash through that ice no problem," he said. "You may be surprised," Luminara said cryptically. "Now, from here on you two are on your own. You will likely face fierce challenges while in the caves. No Jedi gains a crystal without proving themselves. The crystal cave is a mysterious place, so be ready for anything. Focus on finding your crystals and remember what you have been taught, it will guide you to your goal. May the Force be with you." Tightening the straps on his pack, Naruto confidently stepped forward and strode through the door. "Just you wait," he said loudly. "I'm going to make my lightsaber, I guarantee it. No old cave is going to beat me." "Damn straight brat," Jiraiya said, following right behind him. Luminara shook her head at their brash confidence, but said nothing. She merely watched silently as they walked into the caves until they passed out of sight. Naruto exhaled with a shiver, his breath fogging in the chill of the cave. The sound of footsteps, both his and Jiraiya's, echoed off the hard rock walls that surrounded him, adding even further to the unsettling atmosphere that pervaded the ancient tunnels. Glancing around at the icy rock walls, eerily washed in blue light, he had to fight down a sudden burst of nervousness. The reckless confidence he had felt before entering seemed far away now, but stubborn determination took its place. He was Naruto Uzumaki, dammit, and he wasn't about to let fear start controlling him now. He'd finished with that back in the woods outside Konoha, after his first encounter with the Demon Brothers. After a few minutes though, he felt the need to break up the echoing silence. Nervousness he could deal with, but boredom remained a mortal adversary. "Aren't we supposed to feel drawn to our crystals?" he asked Jiraiya, his voice shockingly loud in the quiet tunnels. It added itself to the echoes, lending a hint of faint whispers to the distant clatter of their steps.
What are you asking me for? Jiraiya asked back.
I know I'm awesome. This might make it hard to remember, but I'm not a Jedi Master.
I know as much about this stuff as you do. Ugh, fine, Naruto groaned. Hold up, let me try and sense whatever it is I'm supposed to sense.
Okay, but hurry up, brat. My balls are freezing, Jiraiya said. And you think mine aren't, Naruto muttered under his breath. He ignored his godfather's chuckle and closed his eyes to focus on the Force. His senses had grown significantly over the past year, but for something like this he still felt more confident while lightly meditating. Fortunately, he didn't need to go very deep, as he wasn't trying to glimpse the future or find anything too far away. It took only a few seconds of calm, even breathing, before he sank lightly into the surface of the Force.
It wasn't really even a true meditative trance, but it was sufficient to grant his Force senses extra clarity.
He stretched out slowly at first, wary of being overwhelmed by the vast whirlpool of power that permeated the cave. Once he had acclimated himself to the feel of the Nexus, he opened himself up to the Force, asking for guidance. For all his practice in making a lightsaber, he had no actual idea what his crystal was supposed to feel like through the Force. He cast his net wide, hoping he would somehow just know which feeling indicated his crystal. The Force was smiling on him, it seemed, for no sooner had Naruto begun his search than he felt something in the Force. Something that was, in some undefinable but incontrovertible way, his. He could not have said what it was he actually was feeling at that moment, but he knew beyond any doubt that it was his crystal.
I've got it, he said. At least, I think that's it.
It's your crystal, Jiraiya said.
If you think you feel it, then I trust you. Which way is it? Naruto frowned and reached out for it again.
After a moment's hesitation, he pointed confidently down a branching tunnel to his left.
That way, he said. But it feels deeper, I think. Lower down? Like it's below us somehow.
Well, lead on, Jiraiya encouraged, gesturing him down the tunnel.
What about your crystal? Naruto asked. Don't you need to look for it?
Don't worry about my crystal, Jiraiya said.
If you're right, then it's going to be a long walk to get to yours.
I'm sure I'll feel something on the way.
Now get going.
We stay in here much longer and my testicles are going to be sharing living space with my kidneys.
Naruto rolled his eyes at Jiraiya's moaning, but started down the tunnel. Unlike their earlier path, this one didn't seem to have any forks or offshoots.
It wound deeper and deeper into the ground, seemingly stretching on without end. He could still sense that it was taking them towards his crystal though, so Naruto persevered.
It was after perhaps 15 minutes of walking down the path that Naruto noticed something strange.
The echoes caused by his and Jiraiya's footsteps changed.
What was once a clamor following them down the tunnel faded and grew distant. The sounds of his breathing and his heartbeat became louder, it also distorted, as if he were hearing them underwater. Do you hear that? He asked. No one answered.
He turned around to ask again and froze, eyes wide.
Jiraiya was gone.
Hey!
Where'd you go? He yelled. This isn't funny, you know. Come on out. There was no reply. Jiraiya-sensei? Jiraiya-sensei, where are you? Nothing.
Just his own heartbeat, now racing in his ears.
He was alone. Naruto raced back down the way he had just come.
Maybe he had missed some side passage or hiding spot where his godfather was lurking, waiting to spring one of his stupid jokes.
That had to be it.
He'd find Jiraiya, kick his ass for pulling a prank at a time like this, and then everything would be fine. No matter how much he searched though, there were no hiding spots.
No side passages. No Jiraiya. Okay, what the hell? He yelled. What's going on here? Isn't it obvious, Naruto Baka? A female voice said from behind him. A very familiar female voice.
Naruto whirled around, only to start in surprise at what he saw. Rather than the relatively narrow tunnel he expected, he was looking at a large cavern, strange formations of rock and ice twisting out of the walls and floor. Even more startling than that though, was the figure who stood before him. With her red dress and pink hair, it could only be one person.
As Sakura-chan? That's it for this reading.
Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction.
Looking forward to having you on board again.